Introduction. Ian and 99 other players simultaneously entered the world of Ice and Fire, equipped with auxiliary systems. They would compete in a battle royale format, either to ultimately seize the Iron Throne and conquer the Seven Kingdoms, or to eliminate the other players in pursuit of final victory. The steadfast Ian is determined to embrace the role of a cunning dark wizard. Chapter 1. Game Instructions. The luminous screen before by Chi-Si flickered to life, and he could sense that he remained within the game machine, referred to as the egg. Evidently, the game had yet to commence. Welcome to the game world of A Song of Ice and Fire. I am your auxiliary. System, you may call me Annie. A youthful voice resonated in by Chi-Si's ears. Anai? By Chi-Si inquired with curiosity. Indeed, the voice replied. Your voice is quite pleasant. You must be rather young. Can you effectively serve as my auxiliary system? Absolutely. I have undergone professional training, Annie retorted, slightly miffed by Kai's skepticism, before quickly adopting a somewhat irritable tone. Do not casually engage with the system. Chi-Si chuckled awkwardly. All right, please continue. I shall now elaborate on the detailed game rules. You are about to enter the world of Ice and Fire at present. Only portions of the continents of Westeros and Essos are accessible. Ultimately, a maximum of 4 players may emerge victorious. The conditions for victory are either to eliminate all other players or for one among the counting players to seize the Iron Throne and unify the Seven Kingdoms. Annie paused momentarily. I am aware that many of you have prearranged alliances before the game commenced, however. We will incorporate a feature akin to looting, so I wonder how much you can truly trust your so-called allies. Next, please follow my instructions to initiate the game by pressing the start button. Chi-Si complied, pressing the only button on the white screen. What appeared next was the character creation interface. Now, you will create your character. Upon entering the game, no player will possess any distinctive markings, which means that even if 2 players encounter one another face-to-face, they may merely perceive each other as random passersby. However, the created characters will materialize in the game world out of thin air. No one will retain any memory of you. Players can use these clues to identify and eliminate one another. Please select your character class, as it will endow you with distinct attributes, Annie reminded him. Chi-Si nodded and began to meticulously browse the initial options provided by the system. The catalog contained over 20 pages, with 10 options per page, and each class could be explored in detail. After skimming through the catalog, Chi-Si felt a sudden wave of unease. What were these options? Setting aside the conventional starting classes such as hired swordsmen, hedge knights, 7 gods priests, red priests, merchants, and brotherhood members. What on earth were farmers, butchers, rapists, eunuchs, and even the sweethearts of the Peach Inn? If someone were to select a farmer and remain in some small village in Essos until the game's conclusion, wouldn't that mean the game could only conclude through the unification of the Seven Kingdoms? Theoretically, yes. Ending the game through the unification of the Seven Kingdoms indeed aligns more closely with the company's vision of creating an exhilarating competition, Annie responded. Do not be surprised. I can capture your thoughts as they arise. After entering the game, you will communicate with me directly through your mind. Oh, Chi-Si nodded, then thought, since ending the game through the unification of the Seven Kingdoms is more beneficial for you, why retain the condition of eliminating other players? Are you foolish? If all other players are eliminated, and the last one cannot unify the Seven Kingdoms, but is instead eliminated by NPCs, wouldn't our competition become a farce? Annie's tone was tinged with disdain. Oh, that seems to make some sense. Stop dawdling and select your character. All right, I'm on it. Chi-Si, thinking time was running short, hastily selected a hedge knight that seemed acceptable. Wait, please choose the character that best suits you. Entering the game with a few hours left will not grant you any advantage in this competition. The starting phase is crucial. Annie interrupted him. Ha! Chi-Si grinned. I didn't expect you to sound so harsh yet still be quite responsible. Do not casually engage with the system. This is your final warning. Quickly select your character. Annie's voice was tinged with exasperation. Chi-Si then refocused on the screen, randomly clicking on a seemingly decent class, the Hedge Knight, which boasted Strength 22, Agility 15, and skills, Swordsmanship level 5, Horsemanship level 4, Lance level 3. His starting gear included a sword, a set of old chainmail, a horse, and 200 silver stacks. Why are there only strength and agility? Shouldn't there be intelligence as well? Chi-Si queried. Because this is a realistic simulation game. Current human technology cannot enhance a pig's intellect. Thus, adding intelligence points would be utterly useless. Chi-Si. Reluctantly, he continued to click on the next character, a Brotherhood member with Strength 15, agility 18, skills, archery level 5, stealth level 4, starting with a simple tunic, a longbow, and no currency. Baichisi shook his head. This class was far less advantageous than the Hedge Knight. He then glanced at the other options on the first page: stable hand, crew member, farmer girl, rogue, wildling. He quickly bypassed these and clicked on the caravan leader. Strength 6, agility 6, skills, swordsmanship 2, horsemanship 2, trading with minimal impact in a realistic simulation 4, starting with 3 old horses, 7 mules for servants, and 200 gold dragons. This seemed to offer a reasonable amount of wealth, however. The trading skill was of little use, as it relied on his own verbal abilities for transactions. As Baichisi pondered how tedious it would be to continue this way, he suddenly noticed the sorting button at the top of the catalog. Upon clicking it, he discovered 2 sorting options, by starting combat power and by wealth. Baichisi opted for sorting by combat power, and then clicked on the first option. Strength 29, agility 19, skills, spear proficiency 6, swordsmanship 4, horsemanship 3, starting with a set of leather armor, a spear, a short sword, a small round shield, and no cash. Wow, this character's attributes were impressive. Baichisi exclaimed internally, suddenly realizing that this equipment felt somewhat familiar. He glanced at the name, extending his hand to confirm his selection, only to freeze mid-motion. For he had seen the name, and an icy chill swept through him. Note: in this narrative, the currency is established as 1 gold dragon equaling 30 silver moons, 210 silver stags, and 1 silver stag equating to 392 copper coins. Chapter 2. The Dark Wizard begins with a name. The Unsullied are our only top-tier units available for player selection. We do not offer others, such as the Knights of the Vale, Oathkeepers of the Riverlands, or Dothraki Screamers. Then why release the Unsullied? Baichisi's lips twitched. To surprise the players and provide an additional choice, Annie replied with a rare hint of playfulness in her tone. Baichisi, feeling exasperated, returned to the catalog, examining the available character options sorted by base combat power: Unsullied, Hedge Knight, Free Rider, Hired Swordsman. In terms of wealth, the ranking included 7 gods priests, caravan leaders, city merchants, and smallholders. All characters offering choices are relatively neutral, for the game's NPCs possess no memory of the player-created characters. If you begin as a subordinate of a certain lord, you cannot substantiate your own lineage and narrate it. What to choose? Baichisi pondered earnestly. This is a so-called battle royale game, yet it diverges from traditional formats. The notion of poorly equipped players, or those merely serving as couriers, is nearly impossible. After all, if only 2 players remain in the game, and one is seated upon the Iron Throne, poised to unify the 7 kingdoms, while the other, akin to a dark wizard, has survived to this point, it is patently unrealistic for the latter to slay the king and claim victory. Unless he were a faceless man, Baichisi's eyes brightened indeed. That is a possibility. Mortals are destined to die. Mortals must serve. Before the god of many faces, all beings are equal. However, Baichisi quickly shook his head. Even a faceless man would find it no easy task to kill the king. Moreover, there could be other dark wizards lurking about, meaning that even if he succeeded in slaying the king, it would merely serve to benefit another. So how to choose? Baichisi mused. In such a game, rushing headlong in a battle at the outset, how absurd. Even if late-game developments cannot be overlooked, the initial strategy must be cautious. He surveyed the higher-ranked characters, noting their common trait. They were conspicuously prominent, whether through their starting equipment, mounts, or cargo. Characters with certain abilities remained unrecognized, making them vulnerable to being ambushed by seemingly inconspicuous figures like peasants or townsfolk. Yet, Baichisi considered, choosing characters that are too weak to deceive others is futile. Even if you successfully ambushed a Hedge Knight and looted his belongings, you would merely acquire his equipment, leaving your own prowess woefully inadequate. Unless, of course, one selected characters endowed with unique abilities. Baichisi meticulously browsed the character directory, vowing that this was the longest he had ever spent on an initial selection. With $1 million at stake, he must tread carefully. The strong are conspicuous, while the inconspicuous are too feeble. Never mind. Strength is the ultimate truth. Other resources can be acquired later. If the initial stats are low, he could not foresee when they might be rectified. Resolute, Baichisi clicked on the Hedge Knight and confirmed his choice. Selection, successful character generation in progress. Please name your character, and reminded him. A name? Baichisi contemplated. Naming is a significant issue, as all players possess a certain familiarity with the world of Game of Thrones. Should an unfamiliar name suddenly rise to prominence, it would be evident to all that one is a player. Moreover, surnames hold great importance. If one introduces a newly created character with the surname Stark or Lannister, should this be revealed, it would not bode well. However, Chi quickly devised a plan. Who, more than a bastard, would be less inclined to discuss their lineage. Typically, if you introduce yourself as snow, rivers, or sand, no one would pry into your background, unless they were looking for trouble. With this in mind, Chi entered his name, Ian Izhan, a bastard from the Westerlands. Perfect. Registration complete. Please select your starting location. Is there no need to edit my backstory? Chi felt a tinge of frustration, as a tragic tale had already formed in his mind. Even if you edit your backstory, it won't be retained in the NPC's memories. It's pointless. You might as well embellish it yourself later, and remarked. Now that you mention it, that does make some sense. Enough talk. Select your starting location, and urged. Chi examined the array of starting locations available, from grand cities like King's Landing, Lannisport, and the Sun Spear, to small villages like Molestown south of the Wall. The most perilous locations are often the safest. Chi whispered to himself, then reached out to select the town of Moat Cailin, north of King's Landing. Let them fight it out first. As the screen darkened, Chi lost his sight, then his hearing, and finally his sense of touch. Ding dong! A notification echoed in Ian Hishan's mind, rousing him from slumber. Ian lifted his head. He found himself in a somewhat dilapidated room, with a rickety bed, a wooden table darkened by grime, and long unwashed curtains that imbued the space with an air of cheapness. Outside, a fine rain fell, providing little relief from the oppressive heat. Ian felt sticky and uncomfortable, gently lifting the covers to discover he was drenched in sweat. A long summer has persisted in Westeros for 10 years, inevitably heralding a more prolonged winter. Winter is coming. Some deem this mere rhetoric, yet Ian knows it to be true. At present, however, he has no time for such thoughts. He does not even know the starting point of the game. Robert's march north? The War of the Five Kings? Or perhaps something later? He could only infer from the sultry air that winter had not yet arrived. Ian climbed from the bed and glanced at the table beside it, where an 80-centimeter longsword lay, sheathed in leather, its hilt devoid of any insignia, reflecting the reality that its owner had not earned such honor. Against the wall rested his other equipment, including a nasal helmet, throat guard, a set of old full-plate armor, and greaves. Fully armed to the teeth, Ian chuckled. The Hedge Knights are essentially mercenaries. Their only wealth lies in their gear and steeds, forced to sleep beneath hedges in the wild. By this reckoning, I might be considered a relatively well-off Hedge Knight, Ian mused. At least I can afford to stay in this cheap, and that charges mere coppers per night. There are many aspects I have not annotated. Firstly, I do not wish to directly replicate lines from the original work, and secondly, I presume that those entirely unfamiliar with Game of Thrones or Song of Ice and Fire would not stumble upon my narrative. Chapter 3. The First Blood Quest. What should I do at the beginning? Ian pondered. Fool, did you just forget the task reminder? And exclaimed in exasperation. Ian closed his eyes, and a translucent screen materialized in his mind. The earlier chime that had awakened him was, in fact, a notification for a new task. The taskbar displayed 2 categories, main quest and optional quest. Isn't this supposed to be a sandbox game? Why is there a main quest? Ian inquired in his mind. Just open it and see, and replied impatiently. Ian felt speechless. While other systems might not be particularly charming, some even malevolent enough to annihilate the host for failing tasks, his own system seemed utterly disinterested in him. Reluctantly, he clicked to view the task details. The main quest currently only listed a novice task. Earn 20,000 silver deers. Task reward, system upgrade to level 2. Unlocking the reputation and honor systems. 20,000 silver deers? That seems rather daunting. However, the caravan leader starts with 200 gold dragons, which translates to over 40,000 silver deers. Are they really going to upgrade directly to a level 2 system? No, different characters have varying novice task amounts. And reminded him, oh, in that case, while this is a main quest, it indeed reflects a sandbox mode. Ian then clicked on the optional quest section and felt a tightening in his throat upon seeing the task labeled First Blood. Task requirement. Be the first to kill another player. Reward. Valyrian Steel Sword of Fury, a 2-handed greatsword salvaged from the ancient Valyrian ruins, 2,000 gold dragons. And 3 attribute points. Such a reward seems excessively generous for a novice, doesn't it? Ian could easily envision the players who had planned to team up scheming behind his back. Moreover, his gaze fell back onto his armor. His equipment was rather conspicuous. After all, Everyone starting as a hedge knight wore the same gear. At that moment, Ian felt an overwhelming sense of danger. Even though he had chosen the relatively rare starting location of Twilight Valley. Twilight Valley, a large town situated in the kingdom's territory, is the domain of the Lannister family. Ian had two reasons for selecting this starting point. First, being in the kingdom, players with ambitions of conquest typically would not begin here. Second, its proximity to King's Landing generally attracts players who prefer early confrontations, rather than those who would choose the relatively inconspicuous Twilight Valley. However, the emergence of the First Blood quest instantly raised Ian's vigilance, as if all those around him had transformed into players intent on killing him. Valyrian Steel, a bounty of gold dragons and attribute points. What divine rewards! The player who achieves the first kill could swiftly distance themselves from others in terms of game progression. The foolish system attempts to lure me, the indomitable Voldemort, out into the open? I possess the integrity of a true knight, refusing to reveal myself unless I reach the final circle. With this thought in mind, Ian resolutely declined the optional quest, opened his eyes, and exited the system interface. Approaching the wall, Ian drew his sword from its sheath, meticulously polishing it with an oil-soaked leather cloth. Maintaining one's sword is the instinct of a knight, for the sword embodies their very essence. Despite the myriad of tiny nicks accumulated from years of use, there was not a trace of rust to be found. This blade, a treasured heirloom of a fallen knight, had been bestowed upon the young warrior by his father at a tender age. It had accompanied him through countless battles, and though it bore the scars of conflict, the knight had never relinquished it, for he harbored a dream, to one day forge a hilt adorned with his family crest. Oh dear, with such a vivid imagination, you ought to be writing instead. If it's not your own work, I shan't read it, and remarked. Laced with a hint of mockery, Ian sheepishly scratched his head. Before entering this competition, I was merely a struggling writer, having written fanfiction inspired by Ice and Fire, which granted me the knowledge necessary to qualify. Wowug, think quickly about what you intend to do next. Don't linger there crafting tales of a sword, nor engage in idle chatter with the system. And retorted, no, it was you who sought me out first. Ian protested, feeling aggrieved. Bah, that is only because you waste time. What concern is it of yours whether I squander my time? Am I to be penalized? Is that so? What would I, as a system, need in the way of wages? I simply cannot abide your slothful demeanor. All right, Ian acquiesced, stepping through the door. However, as he reached the second-floor corridor and glanced down, he hastily retreated. What troubles you now? I have a feeling that the plump landlady downstairs and her freckled little daughter are both players, and they are plotting my demise, Ian replied. I am utterly exasperated. There are only 100 players in total. With your line of reasoning, even 1,000 players wouldn't suffice. Moreover, even if they were players, as a hedge knight, you could easily dispatch them with a single hand. Well, that does hold some truth. Ian conceded, having grown accustomed to timidity, momentarily forgetting his knightly stature. He glanced at his robust arms, realizing they possessed considerable strength. Yet, venturing out directly was still too perilous. Ian pondered. Revealing himself so brazenly was not the hallmark of a true Voldemort. His gaze returned to the suit of armor by the wall, and suddenly, a spark of inspiration ignited within him. Since no one possessed memories of my identity, who could discern my true nature at the outset? The sole identifying feature was my starting equipment. If I were to sell everything upon commencement and don the attire of a humble farmer, would I not then be perceived as just an honest and simple peasant? My equipment status remains unchanged. Such a guise is sufficient for me to navigate the perilous phase of the initial blood mission safely. Ian assessed the wear on his gear and estimated that this armor could fetch around 500 silver deer if sold. Given his starting choices, he should possess a horse, which could be sold for over 600 silver deer. The equipment and the steed comprised the entirety of a hedge knight's possessions, their very essence. However, Ian harbored no semblance of the so-called knightly spirit, nor did he intend to uphold the honor of a destitute knight. Should he sell his equipment and procure 2 carts to engage in trade? Chapter 4. Should he lie in wait for a chance? No. That is the gameplay of Mountblade. In this realm, the profits from trade likely do not soar as high. Yet, as Ian recalled this character's memories of the world, he realized that, although the prices of furs in this world did not reach the exaggerated disparity found in the north of the Mountblade world, where one could acquire furs for over 100 silver deer and sell them for 300 in the southern cities, the prices of furs were indeed higher in the south than in the north. As for other goods, Ian's recollections were less clear. He suddenly thought of the merchant's starting point. At that time, the system had indicated that the trading skill's effects were not negligible, though not entirely without merit. Its significance, then, Must lie in the merchant's memory of the prices of goods across various locales, perhaps? Wait, Ian pondered further. According to the initial game instructions he received, the company aimed to construct a world that was thoroughly immersive, akin to the realm of ice and fire. Many details in the original work were not fully fleshed out. Thus, the company drew upon numerous prior game settings related to a song of ice and fire while building this world, including those from Mount Blade. Consequently, furs from the north, salt from salt pans, and iron ore from Casterly rock should be the most stable and high-volume commodities. If I were to start as a merchant, I would certainly choose these goods in the early stages to amass wealth swiftly. Should I then devise a way to lie in wait for a chance? The more Ian contemplated, the more feasible it seemed. Please tell me the details of the looting feature, Ian inquired of Annie. Eliminating other players activates the looting function, which provides the killer with corresponding experience points, gold dragons, and attribute skill points based on the slain player's reputation, honor, level, and various statistics. As for acquiring the slain player's equipment and cash, that aspect requires manual looting, correct? Yes, you may disregard that part. However, the former is an additional reward provided by the system, which significantly aids player growth. It can be said that the later one progresses. The more bountiful the rewards for eliminating a player become, Annie explained patiently. In other words, if I discover that someone is a player and manage to eliminate him, can I feign ignorance, keep my eyes on him, and wait until he is fattened before striking? This is a genuine simulation game where you are free to engage in any activity you can conceive, unbound by the laws of this era. As long as you remain undetected, you may disregard the law without a second thought, for in these chaotic times, there is little expectation that the law will hold any significance. Chaotic times? Ian promptly inquired about the starting point of our narrative. The story commences with the death of Prime Minister Aelin, as King Robert journeys north to Winterfell, inviting Ned Stark to descend and serve as Hand of the King. Players will be afforded a period of peaceful development. Ian nodded, finding the original timeline to be quite reasonable. However, he pondered whether there might be fervent supporters of House Stark who would seek to alter the fated demise of the Lord of Winterfell, with the player's modest starting strength. Attempting to change the course of events prior to the War of the Five Kings seemed a mere fantasy. Shaking off such distant thoughts, Ian contemplated where to position himself in order to secure the first blood. If his suspicions held true, merchants typically favored furs, salt, and iron ore as their initial trading commodities. In the north, furs, if obtained by traversing the King's Road through Neck to gather furs at the White Tree before returning south, would entail a lengthy journey. Alternatively, traveling by sea to purchase furs at White Harbor would shorten the time required, yet the steep shipping costs might deter many. The Iron or near Ketch Town and Lannister Port presented a limited quantity for this genuine simulation, where the initial transport capacity appears quite meager. Thus, salt from Saltfield Town, Earl Haraway's estate, and nearby villages would likely be the player's preferred choice. This area lies in the Riverlands, well connected, and, unlike the turmoil that would erupt during the War of the Five Kings, remains relatively peaceful under the rule of House Tully. The merchant begins with 3 old horses, 7 mules for servants, and 200 gold dragons. Ian meticulously noted these starting characteristics, now setting his sights on Saltfield Town. A merchant start is undoubtedly a popular choice, and all he needed was to lie in wait for a player whose initial traits had not swiftly transformed, to eliminate them and acquire a Valyrian steel sword, 2,200 gold dragons, and 3 attribute points. This would allow him to complete the novice quest and elevate his system level to 2. As long as he executed his disguise well, even if he failed to ambush anyone, the risk would be minimal. The more he considered it, the more it aligned with his inherently cautious nature. The subsequent challenge was determining how to eliminate the merchant, given that he had 4 servants. Though the initial statistics of such servants would not be particularly impressive, this was not merely a game. Ian would need to engage in combat himself, and one could never predict unforeseen complications. With this in mind, Ian concluded that he should seek 2 accomplices, perhaps by recruiting mercenaries at the tavern. No. Ian shook his head. If the mercenary he found happened to be a player, even if they initially remained unaware of each other, when he attempted to apprehend the conspicuously identifiable merchant, the player mercenary would undoubtedly discern his intentions. Although the likelihood of randomly encountering a player mercenary was rather slim, Ian still perceived this venture as somewhat perilous. Conversely, those merchants would likely be hesitant to recruit mercenaries early on, as mercenaries themselves would also represent a popular starting choice. Furthermore, if he were to slay a merchant now, he would surely be wanted, wouldn't he? Thus, he needed to disguise himself meticulously. Ian meticulously plotted his course of action. Once he succeeded near the salt pans, he would promptly return to Maiden Spring Town, then embarked by boat to the free trade city of Essos, using the earnings from his quest to furtively develop far from the Seven Kingdoms. Having devised this plan, Ian donned his sword, wrapped his armor in cloth, opened the door to his room, and stepped into the realm of uncertainty. After inquiring with the innkeeper about the location of the blacksmith shop, Ian paid 20 copper coins as lodging fees and ventured to the stables in the backyard to lead his rather more deplorable-looking horse than he had anticipated, making his way towards the blacksmith's. The rain was light, not hindering Ian's movements. He led his horse along the path, vigilantly observing every passerby, for he could not afford to lower his guard until he had sold his entire set of equipment. Any player who, like him, had explored multiple starting professions could easily recognize his identity at a glance. Chapter 5. The Old Blacksmith and the Night Watchman. The blacksmith shop was rather desolate, occupied only by an elderly blacksmith and 2 young apprentices. The old blacksmith appeared diminutive yet robust. His brown hair was flecked with gray. Upon Ian's entrance, he had just completed a rigorous forging of an iron sword, skillfully withdrawing it before plunging it into a nearby barrel of cold water to temper it. The incandescent sword hissed as it submerged, releasing wisps of white steam. "Young man, what can I assist you with?" the old blacksmith inquired, noticing Ian's presence. Ian then recognized just how youthful he appeared, likely not more than 20 years of age, in alignment with his actual age. The game did not present an age selection option. The system defaulted to using the player's real age, and most participants in this competition fell within the age range of 20 to 30, requiring heightened vigilance around individuals of this demographic. "Why didn't you mention this sooner?" Ian thought, responding mentally. "You didn't ask, and besides, the game instructions were rather lengthy. Did you truly want to hear it all at once?" "Well, I'm pressed for time," Ian replied in his mind. Ian scrutinized the old blacksmith, having learned of him from the innkeeper. Given that players' initial characters had no recollection of anyone, this lifelong blacksmith in Twilight Valley was undoubtedly innocent, as were the 2 young apprentices. The game's enrollment requirement stipulated that one must be at least 18 years old, and they were clearly not. Thus, he felt secure. Ian exhaled deeply, then unwrapped the package, revealing his complete set of old armor. "Uncle, I wish to sell this equipment," he said, placing the items upon the table. The old blacksmith, Eaton, regarded Ian with a hint of suspicion before meticulously examining the armor. There were no cracks, and the surface bore only minor wear. With a good polishing, it could fetch a handsome profit. However, Eaton looked back at Ian. "You must be a hired knight, am I correct? What prompts you to sell your gear?" "Because I no longer need it," Ian replied with a faint smile tinged with bitterness. "I am a bastard, devoid of honor since birth. I have grown weary of the life of a hedge knight. People often say that hired knights and brigand knights are merely 2 sides of the same coin. I mean no offense, but the reputation of most hired knights is indeed rather tarnished." Eaton shook his head, steadfast in his choice of words, insisting on hired knight rather than the pejorative hedge knight. "Of course, this is understood by all," Ian continued, a resolute expression gracing his face. "I have made my decision. I wish to sell my armor to leave my mother a sum of money, and then I shall journey north to the Wall. That is the only place where a bastard like me can attain honor. Becoming a brother of the Night's Watch is my destined fate." The old blacksmith seemed lost in thought, tears glistening in the corners of his eyes. "Good lad, may the 7 bless you." He lifted Ian's armor once more. "Since this will be your mother's last bit of money, I shall not take advantage of you. How does 600 silver stags sound?" "Agreed." Ian concealed his delight at receiving an additional 100 silver stags, nodding with a feigned somberness. "Indeed." Eaton nodded in return. "Young man, I feel a connection with you. Let me gift you something." The old blacksmith turned and disappeared behind a door, only to emerge moments later wielding a longsword. "I hear the wildlings north of the Wall are quite savage. You will need a reliable weapon," he said, handing the sword to Ian. As Ian grasped the sword, he immediately felt its weight. It matched the length of his own blade, but was a touch heavier. Drawing it from its leather scabbard, he noted the slightly dull sheen of the blade, which bore many small nicks along the edge, though they were far less severe than those on his own sword. "This sword is forged from fine steel, crafted with impeccable artistry," Eaton explained. "It was once the sword of a friend from my youth. But let us not dwell on him. Take this sword." Ian gently brushed his fingers along the blade, keenly aware of its sharpness. The blacksmith's generosity left him somewhat astonished. "Perhaps he possesses a story, and I have unwittingly touched his heart," Ian mused, feeling fortunate indeed. "Thank you," he expressed gratefully. "No need." Eaton waved his hand with a carefree smile. "This sword is not a gift. I merely return it to a future brother of the Night's Watch." Ian nodded, expressing his gratitude once more before confirming the exchange of 2 gold dragons and 180 silver stags with Eaton. as he departed from the blacksmith shop. Just before he exited, he faintly overheard the old blacksmith murmuring, "Tonight is but a reflection of every night." Stepping out of the forge, Ian reined in his horse and made his way towards a nearby tailor's shop. The profession of tailor was not commonly chosen at the outset of one's journey, for who would willingly embark upon such a mundane vocation? Nevertheless, Ian reasoned that purchasing a garment posed little risk. With a prudent assessment of the situation, he entered the tailoring establishment with confidence. This shop was undoubtedly the largest on the street, with shelves in the central hall displaying an array of garments and fabrics, ranging from woolen sweaters and linen to fine silk and velvet, as well as some pelts more commonly found in the north, a veritable cornucopia of choices. Ian surveyed the materials, contemplating the identity he wished to assume in the attire that would best suit his new role. "Welcome, Lord Lannister." A cheerful voice interrupted Ian's thoughts as a young girl, filled with enthusiasm, approached him. She left a delightful first impression on Ian. However, he quickly glanced around, noting the apparent absence of anyone resembling nobility. "Welcome to Old Jenny's tailor shop, Lord Lannister. We are the largest and finest tailor in Moonsbury, and we can surely craft garments to your liking." The girl, noticing Ian's indifference, became a bit anxious. It was then Ian realized she was addressing him. Following the girl's gaze, he looked down at his waist and suddenly noted the hilt of the newly acquired sword, adorned with the familiar emblem of a lion, a Lannister's blade. No wonder the girl had made the mistake. Yet, as Ian pondered, he saw an opportunity to adopt a fresh identity. Ian Hishan, a bastard from the Westerlands, garbed in finery and seemingly never short of coin, though he never spoke of his origins. Still, he bore a finely crafted sword bearing the Lannister sigil. Perfect. Satisfied with his cleverness, Ian nodded to himself and addressed the young girl, requesting to see if she had any silk robes in stock that would fit him. Noting the hesitation in her eyes, he added, "Money is no object." Chapter 6. Nobility. After donning a new silk robe, Ian sold his old horse for 300 silver stags, using the proceeds to purchase a younger steed for 400 silver stags. At this juncture, Ian still possessed over 300 silver stags and a few copper stars. However, should he wish to engage in trade, this sum was evidently insufficient, and he lacked the means to acquire a new suit of armor. If he failed to secure the funds from the initial quest, his aspirations of earning a living as a typical mercenary knight or participating in various tournaments to generate income would likely remain unattainable. At that moment, his choices were reduced to either truly venturing north to join the Night's Watch or adhering to his original plan of heading to Essos to enlist in the Second Sons or the Golden Company. Alternatively, he might find himself serving as a novice at the House of White and Black, perhaps even achieving the elusive status of a faceless man. In any case, an escape route remained, albeit one that demanded a greater degree of cunning than his current predicament, with the odds of success considerably diminished. Upon logging into the system and accepting the optional quest of blood, Ian departed from the town of Twilight Vale, riding westward on his new steed, reaching Horn Hill, near the King's Road, just before nightfall. The castle's grand entrance was adorned with the blue, white-spotted, and golden stag banner of House Buckwell. Ian spent the night at an inn outside the castle. Having completed his disguise, he was no longer concerned about his identity as a player being uncovered, for he had shed all initial characteristics. With a flick of his golden locks, Ian felt a renewed confidence in his identity as a Lannister bastard. He rewarded himself with a sumptuous meal for 40 coppers, indulging in whole grain bread complemented by bacon and lamb, roasted quail, and malt ale. After a brief rest, he set forth at dawn, riding north along the King's Road. Throughout the journey, Ian occasionally closed his eyes to log into the system, checking the quest details. Relieved to find that the task had not changed. This was to be expected. The blood quest was issued only after players entered the game, and naturally, individuals would not begin contemplating ambush strategies while selecting their starting locations. In such circumstances, placing 100 players across the vast continents of Westeros and even Essos was akin to pouring water into the ocean. Identifying and eliminating other players within a day or two posed considerable challenges. As for a city like King's Landing, although multiple players would undoubtedly begin there, its population of several million made encounters exceedingly rare. Nevertheless, Ian remained vigilant, aware that unexpected events could arise. What if a singularly minded player placed undue trust in an ally found prior to the game's commencement and honored their agreement? With these thoughts in mind, Ian quickened his pace. By the time he reached the small town of Earl Haraway that afternoon, the prolonged horse ride had left him somewhat fatigued, particularly since he had not paused for a proper meal at noon, subsisting instead on dry bread and water. Fortunately, the scenery met his expectations. He had arrived in time. Nearby, a salt mine, though not as grand as the salt pans, could sufficiently supply the needs of a caravan leader starting the game. At that moment, a caravan, half filled with goods, was stationed beside the woods outside the mine, perfectly matching the scale Ian had memorized. 3 aged horses, 7 mules, for attendants, and a lean young merchant were present, while the foreman of the mine directed workers in loading bags of salt onto the mule-drawn carts. From a distance, Ian tightened his grip on the sword, reminding himself that this was merely a game, not a real act of murder. Yet, why were the salt miners so unhurried? The foreman showed no signs of urgency. Did he not have pressing matters to attend to? Ian felt a surge of caution, pondering whether those who had successfully passed the preliminary challenges to reach the final game could truly be so foolish. Boldly brandishing their initial equipment to loot the salt mines, were they wagering that his weapon held no ammunition? Or did they believe that the combat prowess of their 4 servants was sufficient to ensure their safety? Is it possible to access the servant statistics? Ian inquired silently within his mind. Data retrieval is not feasible. All statistical panels exhibit individual variations. A player must achieve a familiarity level exceeding 50 with another individual to view their statistics, the system replied. Familiarity? This feature would only unlock upon reaching level 3. Moreover, battles in this realistic simulation heavily relied on situational performance, not solely on statistical data. Even the illustrious Arthur Dane could meet his demise at the hands of nameless foes during a siege. Are you suggesting I refrain from rash actions? Ian questioned. The system merely provides information. It does not offer advice, Ian's cold voice responded. Why do I feel as though you've become more rational of late? Where has your usual arrogance gone? Reported by the game referees. My code was temporarily modified by programmers, and replied through gritted teeth. Yet, I sense a hint of emotion in your recent words. My sincerest apologies, she replied, almost mockingly. Ian chuckled lightly, casting a glance at the merchant, surmising that the latter had noticed his presence. He confidently urged his horse towards the salt mines. Having watched numerous British dramas, Ian displayed an air of nobility, riding past the merchant and approaching the foreman with an authoritative demeanor. Who owns the salt mine? He inquired, looking down at the foreman. The owner is Count Lucas Rupper, the Lord of Holloway, the foreman replied, recognizing Ian's distinguished status and bowing respectfully. Then why do you permit the sale of goods to others so casually? Ian frowned. The young count currently serves as the attendant to Sir Andre Charlton and is preoccupied with other matters. The town's affairs are managed by the mayor, and all the salt from our mine is sold to passing merchant caravans, the miner explained deferentially, though internally he resented the Lannisters' interference in this region. Very well. I intend to purchase this salt mine. Now, take me to your mayor, Ian commanded, pulling on the reins to turn around. However, he paused, as if recalling something, and pointed at the merchant. I urgently require a supply of salt, refund their payment, and have the salt delivered to me. The foreman broke into a cold sweat. We still have some stock in our warehouse, but may I inquire what you need the salt for? Must I elaborate? Ian brusquely interrupted the foreman, questioning whether he doubted his ability to afford such a dilapidated mine. Chapter 7. A duel of wits. The foreman, instantly alarmed, sought refuge in the gaze of the merchant beside him. The lean merchant, momentarily at a loss, reluctantly turned to his portly attendant for guidance. Observing this exchange, Ian narrowed his eyes. The nonchalant salt miners, donning their rudimentary gear, were merely here to procure salt. It seemed this fellow had grown audacious, wagering on the emptiness of Ian's firearm. He had exchanged garments with his attendant, clearly lying in wait for unsuspecting prey. Yet, Ian pondered, what made him believe he could successfully ambush anyone with such a meager entourage? As Ian contemplated, the player conferred with his servant, and the lean impostor approached Ian, who feigned ignorance of their clandestine maneuver. My lord, I am Haru Ewans, a traveling merchant from the city of Brightwater Bay, he introduced. I do not concern myself with your identity, Ian interjected. My sole interest lies in this shipment of salt. And may I inquire who you are, my lord? Ian Shishan. Ian replied with a smile. Perhaps you have not heard of me, but this consignment is intended for Lord Kaifeng. I strongly advise against entertaining any notions. The lean merchant was evidently intimidated, far beyond the foreman's earlier instructions. He glanced at the stout attendant, who, feeling somewhat frantic, hurried to clarify. My cousin is not particularly astute. I usually make the decisions for our caravan. A reasonable explanation, Ian mused coldly. Had he truly been a noble bastard, he might have been deceived. Acting before me, I am a graduate of the university's drama academy. Then you shall converse with me. What compensation do you seek for relinquishing this cargo? I can assure you double the price. Even if you were to transport the goods south, that would be the maximum profit. Ian fabricated his words while calculating the feasibility of drawing his sword and slaying the merchant without repercussions. Provided the salt miners did not intervene, it should pose no issue, he concluded, yet he remained cautious. For the merchant's audacity to fish for victims under such a guise was still perplexing. Opposite Ian, the genuine Haru Iwans was also deep in thought. He was not here merely for the modest profits from salt. He sought the coveted Valyrian steel sword and a substantial sum of 2,000 gold dragons. Who would have anticipated the emergence of an audacious noble bastard? Should he forfeit this opportunity to hunt and return to the salt town to strategize? Time would be against him. With 100 players vying for the first blood, every second counted. Double, you say? Haru beamed brightly. That is unnecessary. Simply refund the deposit we have already paid, and please extend my regards to Lord Kaifeng. I shall certainly convey your greetings and relay the gentleman's goodwill towards the Lannister family. Ian nodded politely, contemplating internally. I have severed your source of income. Now, do as you will. Indeed, Ian noticed Haruai signaling to the foreman of the salt mine. No wonder the workers were moving the salt at a leisurely pace. He had bribed the foreman. Fortunately, I refrained from acting impulsively. My lord, please follow me. I shall take you to meet our mayor to discuss the acquisition of the salt mine. The foreman approached Ian. It was evident he aimed to divert my attention while continuing to lurk here. Ian's gaze flickered momentarily. No haste. First, allow me to inspect the goods. Our family's transport team will arrive before sunset. Let me verify the merchandise. As for the mayor, send a worker to fetch him, and we shall converse here. By the way, Mr. Haruai, kindly move your convoy away so it does not obstruct our position. Ian turned to Haruai. Certainly, sir. It would be my pleasure to assist you. Haruai bowed slightly before turning away. Ian could not see his expression, but he wagered it was far from pleasant. Would he resort to desperate measures to eliminate me? Ian suddenly pondered, although his status as a Lannister bastard was somewhat imposing, and the impending arrival of his family's transport team would surely intimidate the other party. Yet, the reward for that blood task might tempt someone to take risks. After all, was I not showcasing my skills in front of dozens? Ian's contemplation was abruptly interrupted by the sound of an arrow slicing through the air, followed by a low, anguished cry. He spun around to discover an arrow lodged deep beneath the left shoulder blade of the false merchant, perilously close to his heart. The man's face turned ashen as he collapsed from the cart, crimson blood saturating his coarse blue garment. He convulsed on the ground. Yet none of his companions attended to him. Seize him, Haruai commanded, and his servants, along with the scattered salt workers, swiftly drew their concealed iron swords from beneath the salt sacks, rushing towards the nearby woods. Then, several unknown free riders emerged, also pursuing the direction from which the arrow had been loosed. Haruai's eyes gleamed with excitement and bloodlust, utterly disregarding Ian's presence. However, this was clearly not the opportune moment for Ian to launch a surprise attack, as several swordsmen disguised as salt workers remained watchfully near Haruai. He dares to recruit mercenaries? A flicker of barely perceptible astonishment crossed Ian's face. Fortunately, I did not act earlier, or I would have met a grim fate. What is happening? Ian feigned calmness. Oh, my lord, you are unaware of the circumstances. Haruai's tone brightened with the emergence of his prey, and his demeanor towards Ian became indifferent. For he had already ensnared his fish. Who cares about those desiring the salt from this mine? I have an adversary who has relentlessly pursued me for quite some time. Harui explained, evidently harboring no suspicion regarding Ian's identity. Thus, I have laid a trap here. Worry not, my good sir. I shall depart shortly. This rationale, while entirely reasonable, was of little consequence. After all, the personal vendettas of others, particularly those occurring in the realm of the Riverlands, were hardly matters for a bastion of House Lannister to meddle in. Consequently, Harui's explanation became increasingly casual. Ian's belief in it was of no concern to him. At that moment, a clamor arose, revealing that the mercenaries dispatched to capture the assassin had returned. A free rider galloped towards them, his rope binding a man clad in a simple chain shirt, his visage marred by blood. The Brotherhood member, his shoes worn down, sprinted desperately in an attempt to keep pace with his captor. However, as the horse surged ahead, he ultimately fell to the ground, dragged along and leaving a trail of vivid crimson in his wake. As the victorious free rider drew nearer, the stains of alcohol upon his beard became increasingly discernible. While Ian's mood darkened, he cast a glance at Harui, who stood surrounded by 4 swordsmen, all unarmored like himself. Yet, Ian had no delusions of challenging 4 opponents simultaneously. Moreover, the multitude of mercenaries was soon to return. Even if he managed to slay the rotund man, escape alive would be an impossibility. Was it all for naught? Ian squinted, his gaze fixating on the Brotherhood member, bound and being escorted before Harui. 3 meters, plus the length of an arm and a sword. constituted a mere stride's distance. With my agility of 15 and the speed of my draw, I cannot ascertain how swift that truly is, but their attention is not on me at present. If I draw my sword, I could seize this head. I merely require a justification. I am not a player. Even if I claim his head, he would not dare to easily kill a Lannister, particularly one tasked by a figure of significance. The Brotherhood, at that moment. Ian conceived an excuse in his mind as he hastened forward, preempting Harui's dagger from severing the Brotherhood member's throat, piercing his heart with a single thrust. Harui's eyes widened in astonishment, staring at Ian, while the mercenaries beside him momentarily stood in bewilderment. Ian, trembling hands and bloodshot eyes, withdrew his sword from the corpse and, with a swift motion, severed the head. "My lord, what are you doing?" Harui questioned, forcibly suppressing the fury that surged within him. "Members of the Brotherhood," Ian replied, his tone imbued with unrelenting hatred. "Were it not for these scoundrels, I would not be a bastard today." Ian turned to the mercenaries beside Harui, shouting, "My father's former wife is dead. Had it not been for their treacherous assault on my father, he would have soon wed my mother, and I would rightfully be a Lannister, rather than a lowly Hightower." The mercenaries recoiled, intimidated by Ian's formidable presence. Who would willingly provoke a mad Lannister if it were not absolutely necessary? Clearly, they had no such imperative, for their employer, Harui, had contracted them solely to eliminate this threatening adversary. Now, with others harboring grievances against him, should he be slain beforehand, it would bear no consequence, would it? The Brotherhood without banners? Harui's countenance twisted into a grimace as he bellowed, "Seize him. He is an impostor. He is not a Lannister." The mercenaries exchanged glances. Yet none made a move. "Believe me, he is a fraud," Harui insisted, and when he saw their inaction, he added, "Each man who apprehends him shall be rewarded with 5 golden dragons." Harui spoke with conviction, for he had ascertained that Ian was merely a player who had snatched the first kill. Now, if he could eliminate him, he would reap the spoils. "I will outbid him, no matter his price. I shall offer triple." Ian did not retreat. Instead, he regarded the mercenaries with calm composure. "A Lannister always pays his debts." "A bastard of a Lannister," the mercenary captain corrected. "A Lannister bastard," Ian shrugged. "Surely you have heard of my cousin Tyrion, the infamous imp. Have you ever heard of him being in debt?" "The imp is no bastard," the captain chuckled. "He is the younger brother of our Kingslayer and Queen." "In the eyes of his father, every dwarf is a bastard," Ian retorted, recalling his father's own words. "I assure you, my standing in my father's eyes is no less than his and the Duke of Tywin's." The captain furrowed his brow, glancing once more at Ian's sword adorned with the lion's crest, caught in uncertainty. "Imposter? A Lannister bastard? You have quite the imagination, lad. Your performance is commendable. Had I not known that the Brotherhood without banners was established only after Ned Stark dispatched Lord Beric and the sorcerer Melisandre to pursue the mountain's raiders, I might have been swayed by your dramatic display." Harui sneered. Ian's lips twitched. "Oh dear, how could I have forgotten? This is undoubtedly the system's fault. Who could have anticipated that a Brotherhood character would emerge from Robert's northern campaign? Otherwise, I would not have misremembered. Characters do not necessarily indicate the Brotherhood. Could they not be remnants of the once-defunct Kingsguard?" And remarked cheerfully, witnessing Ian's predicament. "Kill him. He is but a counterfeit," Harui commanded once more. Yet all the mercenaries turned their gazes toward one individual, their captain. Ian suddenly understood. Harui's audacity in hiring mercenaries stemmed from the fact that he had directly employed an entire mercenary band. According to the initial premise that no one else would remember the character, he merely needs to confirm with the mercenaries that no new members have recently joined their ranks, thus eliminating the possibility of having recruited a player. Frankly, I find his words incomprehensible. Do you? The Riverlands? I have never heard of it. Ian continues his performance, while Lord Stark remains ensconced in his desolate, icy domain. Since when did matters of the Riverlands fall under his jurisdiction? The mercenaries erupted in laughter. Harui was at a loss for words. He finally realized that he had underestimated this impostor. But what could he do with his merchantess initial attributes? Should these mercenaries betray him, he would be as vulnerable as fish on a chopping block, even if he could discern that they were players. How could he explain this to the mercenaries? Would he dare to say to them, "You are all mere pawns, while only we are the living"? Ian sensed the mercenaries were wavering and added, "Triple the amount. The Lannisters pay their debts." The mercenary captain felt tempted. He had 15 men, each worth 15 gold dragons, totaling over 200 gold dragons. As for how many silver stags that would yield, he had no idea. Mathematics was never his forte. He demanded payment up front. He could not produce such an amount. Harui continued to flounder in desperation. "The Lannisters pay their debts," Ian continued to say with a nonchalant demeanor. Though internally he was in turmoil, mentally querying Annie. How do I claim my first kill reward? Hello, your package is currently being delivered. Please be patient, Annie replied mechanically. Ian. Chapter 9. Fury. The mercenary captain certainly did not believe Harui. To him, Harui's sudden assault on Ian seemed utterly absurd. In fact, from the very beginning, he found this employer rather peculiar, especially considering his request to hire all 15 of them to disguise themselves at the salt mine, forbidding the inclusion of any newcomers. These demands were strange yet straightforward. He offered an exorbitant price of 20 gold dragons, merely requiring them to protect him for a day while eliminating his enemies. The captain simply could find no reason to refuse. Similarly, when Ian proposed a triple offer, the mercenary captain had no grounds for rejection. Anyone who speaks to mercenaries about honor is a fool, as ridiculous as discussing ideals, poetry, and distant lands with the impoverished in King's Landing. When the mercenaries drew their swords to the throats of Harui and his servants, he finally fell silent, realizing his game was up. Although Ian Hishan was merely a false bastard, he had secured a first blood, thus he could indeed produce the gold. Once he presented those gold dragons, these men would no longer doubt his Lannister identity. Damn those base attributes, Harui seethed inwardly. Had it not been for his abysmal strength and agility as a merchant, he would not have found himself pinned down while someone else claimed first blood. Will the Lannister transport convoy arrive here before tonight? My lord, the mercenary captain, with a gentlemanly smile, stood beside Ian, speaking in a cordial tone. Might we settle our accounts in passing? Of course, the mercenary captain hastily clarified. Lannisters always pay their debts. We have no doubt regarding your credibility. It is merely that my comrades have been somewhat financially constrained lately. Settling our accounts early would alleviate a burden from our minds. A mere 225 gold dragons. Do you know how much gold the gold mine at Casterly Rock produces in a year? Ian, glancing at the two hired swordsmen attentively standing by him, feigned bravado. 500,000 gold dragons. Ian smiled silently. A million? The mercenary captain's mouth fell agape. Ian remained silent, allowing the mercenaries to engage in animated discussion, while Harui, witnessing the scene, muttered, the gold mine at Casterly Rock is depleted, yet they continue to boast. Unfortunately, no one heard his words. Seizing the opportunity while the mercenaries debated the matter of Casterly Rock's gold mine, Ian discreetly closed his eyes and logged into the system interface. The first thing he saw was a collective message, congratulating players on completing optional Quest 1, Blood, followed by the number of surviving players, currently at 98, indicating that 2 had been eliminated, and the other who successfully killed a player must have been a step slower than him. Then came 2 personal messages. 1. Congratulations on completing optional Quest 1, Blood, awarding 3 attribute points. Click to claim 2,000 gold dragons, and the Valyrian steel sword, Fury, in delivery. 2. Congratulations on killing a player, activating the looting function, awarding 1 skill point. Click to claim 100 gold dragons, in delivery. Ian clicked to claim all rewards and then inquired of Annie, how long until the rewards and delivery arrive? Soon, Annie brought up a map, displaying a rapidly moving red dot, which was nearing Count Haraway's town, probably within about 10 minutes. You can allocate your points in the meantime, Annie reminded him. Heeding her advice, Ian switched to his personal interface, attributes, strength 22, agility 15, attribute points 3 skills, swordsmanship level 5, horsemanship level 4, lance level 3. Skill points. 1. Ian chose to allocate all 3 attribute points to strength, and as for the skill point, what could it enhance? Ian inquired. Skill points can only enhance existing skills. New abilities from 0 to 1 require active learning. Points can only strengthen existing capabilities, Annie explained. Ian examined his skills and ultimately concluded that swordsmanship would be most advantageous, thus assigning the point to it. The updated personal interface now displayed attributes, strength 25, agility 15 skills, swordsmanship level 6, horsemanship level 4, lance level 3. Reopening his eyes, Ian assessed his body, sensing no immediate change. However, this does not deter my ambition. I now desire to take on 5 opponents at once. Ian glanced around at the fearsome mercenaries, swallowing hard. Perhaps it was best to let it go. I haven't eaten lunch, and I shall fight next time, I promise. Fortunately, no one noticed the turmoil within Ian's heart. He feigned nonchalance as he surveyed the surroundings. Finally spotting a pair of carts driven by 2 knights at the end of the dirt road leading to the town. It seemed he need not wait until nightfall. He approached the mercenary captain and said, My uncle has sent money ahead. I can settle the bill now. Upon following Ian's gaze and seeing the approaching carts, the mercenary captain's smile widened significantly. He promptly walked over, grabbing Haru's collar and dragging him to stand before Ian. "Do you require my assistance in severing his neck?" the captain inquired. "Do it yourself." Ian recalled En's voice echoing in his mind. Before reaching level 3, he had to personally eliminate players to reap the kill rewards. With determination, Ian took the dagger from the captain's hand and decisively plunged it into Haru's heart. In truth, he had never harmed anyone before. In his previous life, he had only attempted to kill a fish at home. Yet in this brief span of time, he had already taken 2 lives. They were merely players. Upon their demise, they would simply be eliminated and returned to reality. This bore no difference from killing in a game, Ian reasoned. As for the others, they were merely a faceless collective. "I am merely playing a game, just playing a game." For reasons unknown, Ian suddenly recalled the old blacksmith who had gifted him the sword. The tear stains at the corners of his eyes, and those words, "Tonight is as such, and every night henceforth." He remembered the little girl at the tailor's shop, bouncing around him with her incessant chatter. Shaking his head, Ian dismissed these thoughts. At that moment, 2 knights clad in light green plate armor and draped in azure cloaks approached him. Wordlessly, they unloaded 2 chests from the cart and opened them before Ian. The first chest contained a colossal 2-handed sword, its blade darkened, bearing the marks of fire magic. It was a Valyrian steel sword, known as Rage. In Ian's memory, such a sword did not exist in the original narrative. It must have been a creation of the game designers. Moreover, its design likely drew inspiration from either Dawn or Frostmourne. Chapter 10, Secondary System. The second chest held 2,000 gold dragons. Ian counted out 225 for the mercenary captain on the spot, then dismissed him. The mercenaries gazed greedily at Ian's coin pouch, yet his Lannister identity compelled them to hesitate. Additionally, the 2 knights escorting the gold were clearly not to be trifled with. The mercenaries hastily retreated, and Ian had no intention of lingering here. He quickly approached, intending to scavenge for loot, yet after thoroughly searching Harui's corpse, he found no coin pouch. It was evident that the mercenaries had pilfered all his riches. This implied that the recently departed band of mercenaries possessed at least 400 gold coins, and they were likely not far off. Ian shook his head, dismissing that audacious notion. He was unwilling to take any further risks, even those akin to the recent peril he had just faced. "My objective is that $100 million, Ian reminded himself. The recent blunder regarding the Flagless Brotherhood had significantly shaken his confidence. A player's identity can be exposed in myriad ways, and misremembering pertinent information is undoubtedly one of them. Accurate knowledge bolsters one's performance, while any slip-up could prove catastrophic. Better to speak less and forego certain gains than to risk another mistake, Ian pondered. Ding. Congratulations, player, on completing the novice quest. The auxiliary system has been upgraded to level 2. The level 2 auxiliary system grants the following functionalities. 1. Reputation and honor system. 2. Experience system. 3. Auxiliary upgrades. Nes voice resonated in Ian's mind. "I am now enabled to accept brainwave voice commands to assist you in operating the system. And I can offer suggestions within the relevant permissions," Annie elaborated. "How will you assist me in operating the system? For instance, I can read emails aloud for you. Assist in skill allocation, so you need not close your eyes to access the system," Annie replied, referencing the recent notification regarding the system upgrade. "However, I still recommend that you log into the system as soon as possible. You currently have 2 unread emails, in addition to a new main quest and 3 optional quests." "Surely I can't do that here?" Ian glanced around. This location, a hotspot for claiming first blood, might attract the attention of other players. "Quite possible. You should leave here promptly," Annie stated. "By the way, each time the system dispatches rewards to players, the courier can be recruited. Each courier is comprised of 2 randomly selected elite units, with loyalty nearly guaranteed." "This is precisely what I need," Ian mused, smiling as he opted to hire the 2 couriers at a rate of 20 gold coins per person. They were 2 oath knights from Old Town, clad in light green armor forged from fine steel, one named Roll and the other Kess, both appearing taciturn. "Let us go?" Ian instructed them to load the chest onto the carriage while he retrieved his weapon, Fury. Valyrian steel is an exceptionally lightweight metal. Ian wielded the massive 2-handed sword as effortlessly as one might handle a blade half its size, despite possessing only 25 strength. After testing the sword, Ian sheathed it back into its leather scabbard and secured it on his back before taking a seat in the carriage. While the 2 knights took charge of driving and riding Ian's horse, respectively, the group departed from the Salt Well, heading eastward. The management of Earl Harroway's town is indeed lax. Even with such a significant incident occurring in the Salt Well, no military forces have been dispatched to investigate. However, this has little relevance to Ian, who now intends to hastily make his way to Lady Springtown. There, he plans to await the arrival of 2 waves of player slayers before embarking on a boat to Westeros. Seated in the carriage, Ian closed his eyes, immersing himself in the system. The interface of the secondary system has presented itself differently, akin to the introductory layout of the first level. Attributes, tasks, mail, and reputation honors are now displayed in a linear fashion. Yet, following each attribute and skill, an experience bar has been added. For instance, the current system experience reads 100-1000, indicating that Ian requires 900 experience points to ascend to the 3rd tier. Furthermore, attributes and skills can now be enhanced through practice. There are 2 unread messages. The first is a notification regarding the slaying of Haru E, which grants him 1 skill point upon acceptance. Ian promptly requested Annie's assistance in allocating this point to swordsmanship. The second message is a globally available player quest for an airdrop. Task description. The system has concealed a treasure chest within the flea market in King's Landing, containing the task reward, a deed to the ruins of Whispering Castle and 20,000 gold dragons. At that moment, Ian's mind conjured a singular term, meat grinder. Unlike the previous quest that encouraged players to seek out targets, this task has pinpointed its location within the flea market of King's Landing, foreshadowing a bloody confrontation. As for the deed to the ruins of Whispering Castle, it once belonged to the Kleber family on Crabclaw Peninsula, having lain in ruins for a millennium. What purpose would there be for such a castle? Based on Ian's gaming experience, the player who secures this airdrop quest will likely face a subsequent task to restore the Whispering Castle with a handsome reward of 20,000 gold dragons, making the restoration feasible, thereby granting him the title of knight. Ian contemplated that once the remaining 2 deliveries arrived, he could recruit 4 additional elite couriers, combined with his current prowess, thereby securing a significant advantage in the competition for the airdrop within the flea market. However, engaging with a multitude of players poses considerable risks. For instance, Haru E had contemplated hiring an entire mercenary company to avoid inadvertently employing players. Who knows if a player might initiate their journey as a darling of House Stark in King's Landing, seducing a captain draped in gold, only to orchestrate a trap with hundreds of gold-clad soldiers lying in wait to ensnare unsuspecting players? The likelihood may be slim, yet it cannot be entirely dismissed. Moreover, what purpose would there be in establishing a stronghold in the realm of kings? Could one truly conquer and expand territory from within such a domain? Pondering these complexities, Ian chose not to accept the task. Upon clicking to retreat, he was presented with a main quest: achieve 100 reputation and 20 honor, with rewards of 500 system experience and 2 skill points. Notably, main quests do not require formal acceptance. As he scrolled downward, he encountered 3 optional quests. 1. The gift of the octopus spider. The little birds in the tavern conveyed that Count Varys was seeking someone endowed with sufficient courage and strength to locate him and fulfill his task. 2. Beyond the abyss. The Night's Watch was in short supply, and evidence suggested that the wildlings were migrating southward. The Bachelor of Black Castle had written to the 7 Kingdoms for aid, urging recruits to join the Night's Watch at Black Castle. 3. The Wrath of the Sleeping Dragon. Rumors indicated that Illyrio from Pentos had contacted the Dothraki Horse Lord, Khal Drogo, to facilitate a marriage between the Horse Lord and the Targaryen dynasty, thus swearing fealty to the true king, Viserys Targaryen, in Pentos. Selecting one of these quests would yield a reward: any 1 new skill, 3 attribute points, and 200 system experience. Ian's lips twitched. Viserys, after all, was a true dragon. He did not rush to accept a quest, yet his plans to head to Braavos had already been abandoned in his mind. Pentos it would be. If fortune favored him on the sea, he might even arrive in time for the wedding of that legendary Horse Lord, who had never known defeat. Should he perhaps pay a visit to the esteemed steward first? Chapter 11. The dilemma of optional quests. Not long after departing from the town of Lord Harroway, nightfall enveloped the land. At the confluence of King's Road and the Trident, they discovered the ruins of Derry. With its lord gone, Derry's population had dwindled to a mere handful, and the farmer's keep at the town's center was devoid of light. Ian, accompanied by 2 knights, searched diligently until they found a humble dwelling in the old territory of House Derry, once loyal to the Targaryens, where they could rest for the night. Their supper consisted of hard, stale bread and beans, providing sustenance for the evening. Unlike true hedge knights, Ian had no habit of indulging in wine, surprisingly. Neither did Roll nor Kess. In an age where drinking was rampant, this was indeed peculiar. Observing their armor, Ian could not help but acknowledge the superior craftsmanship of the knights from the Riverlands, as opposed to the rougher armors worn by their counterparts from the Vale and the North. As he lay in bed, Ian pondered his earlier plan. After securing his first blood, he intended to seek opportunities in Bravos to amass wealth. He believed he would always find a way. For Bravos was a city of opportunity, and he possessed a considerable sum of golden dragons as startup capital. However, the emergence of these 3 optional quests left him in a quandary. Were everyone's optional quests the same? Ian inquired of Annie in his mind. The optional quests are randomized. Annie replied, "We have designed over 3,000 distinct optional quests, which will be distributed to players based on their strength levels at appropriate times. Will I draw the same quest as others? The probability is low, but not entirely dismissible," Annie stated, adding, "You must trust that your current strength surpasses that of many players by a significant margin. There is no need for excessive caution. In the realm of scarcity, one resorts to consuming chickens, while in affluence, one finds solace in swift deliveries. Unless I can persuade Soros of Mill to align with me, it is prudent for me to maintain a low profile. Nonetheless, you are right. Should there be players embarking on the same quests as I, it would only serve to augment my experience." After responding to Annie, Ian resumed his contemplative musings. Firstly, the notion of becoming a brother of the Night's Watch was dismissed. His aspirations lay elsewhere, rendering that task irrelevant. Next, he considered the mission involving the octopoid spider. As for Varys, should this quest arise years hence, it would likely pertain to aiding Daenerys in her quest to reclaim Westeros. However, at this juncture, King Robert remains in robust health. He must be contemplating hiring someone to eliminate both Viserys and Daenerys, the last remnants of House Targaryen. Although he has dispatched Jorah Mormont, he is likely seeking additional assurances. As for pledging fealty to Viserys, such an act would, in essence, equate to swearing allegiance to Daenerys. To directly ally with the Mother of Dragons in her conquest could be enticing, men conquering women to conquer the world. Yet, Ian pondered the daunting company surrounding Daenerys, Khal Drogo, Dario Naharis, and that nameless noble from Meereen. Counting the men at the side of this storm queen sent shivers down his spine. Given his current capabilities, aligning with Daenerys would likely place him on par with Jorah Mormont, if not beneath him. Reflecting on the steadfast devotion of Ser Jorah, Ian felt a pang of sorrow for him. To witness the beloved woman continually surrounded by a parade of suitors must evoke profound melancholy. Moreover, a pressing thought emerged. Every player possesses foreknowledge of the unfolding narrative. The sudden rise of an unfamiliar name would undoubtedly attract scrutiny. It is widely recognized that Daenerys initially had only Mormont as her supporter. Should I now approach to pledge my allegiance, it would surely draw the attention of observant players, thereby exposing my identity. Furthermore, any endeavor leveraging foreknowledge of the story's progression carries both advantages and disadvantages. The benefits include rapid enhancement of one's power, while the drawbacks encompass the risk of being targeted by players who similarly seek to exploit these events. After all, relying on player elimination to foster one's growth constitutes a valid strategy, just as House Tyrell's motto emphasizes the cycle of life. House Greyjoy's maxim advocates for seizing victory through force rather than toil, with the latter evidently presenting a lesser risk of exposure. Thus, Ian contemplated Varys' mission. Presently, Daenerys is likely at her most vulnerable. Once she weds Drogo, the challenge of eliminating her would become insurmountable. Moreover, barring any interference with the storyline, Daenerys will eventually arrive in Westeros, accompanied by 3 dragons, 8,000 unsullied, and countless Dothraki warriors. At that point, would we players dare to confront her for the Iron Throne? Perhaps devising a plan to eliminate her sooner rather than later is indeed a prudent strategy. After all, others, be it House Stark, House Lannister, or Littlefinger, are at least not exploiting any unfair advantages. After accepting an optional task, is there a penalty for failing to complete it? Ian inquired of Annie. There will be no penalty. Simply click to abandon the task, and you can accept another. Optional tasks refresh each month. Ian nodded, making a decision. He would not travel to the town of Maidenpool tomorrow, but would instead head to King's Landing to meet the renowned giant spider. This world began with Robert's ascent, and it has only been 2 days since then. Thus, Robert has yet to arrive at Winterfell. Therefore, after reaching King's Landing, he could take a ship to Pentos and still have ample time to arrive before Daenerys wed Khal Drogo. First, he would undertake Varys' task, then proceed to Pentos, seizing opportunities as they arose. If he could not find a chance to eliminate the Stark siblings, he would abandon the task and accept a third one, attempting to pledge fealty to the sleeping dragon, mixing in rewards as he went. If danger arose, he would flee immediately. As for loyalty, he was discussing loyalty with a mercenary knight. Wait, the loyalty of a mercenary may not even be desired. Tomorrow, when my other 4 couriers arrive, I must purchase a fine suit of armor and find an unscrupulous blacksmith to emblazon our crest upon it. Also, I need to melt down the lion's head on my sword. The Lannisters are not favored in the presence of the Targaryen heirs. Once the crest is ready, I could masquerade as a noble from Westeros, having heard of the true king's existence, and arrive with 6 knights seeking to pledge my allegiance. With the intelligence of that sleeping dragon, I should be able to deceive him with just a few words, right? From there, I would take it one step at a time. Optional tasks refresh only once a month, and I must complete at least one of these too. Lost in thought, Ian drifted into a sweet slumber. Note, the Sorcerer of Mill, a demon monk, a follower of the Lord of Light, who has resurrected Lord Beric multiple times, in fact. In the future, Chapter 12 Ian Riverwind at dawn, Ian paid a silver stag for the lodging of 3 and then, accompanied by 2 knights, exited the cottage. It was at this moment that Ian realized, perhaps due to the late hour the previous day, he had not seen many things clearly, such as this city which, though in decline, was not quite the ruin he had imagined. Derry was somewhat desolate, yet still home to numerous citizens. Upon looking up, Ian saw the banner on Farmer's Keep, which he had not discerned in the dim light the night before. It depicted a black farmer on a shield-shaped brown cloth. The Derry family had once been powerful, yet their staunch royalist stance during the War of Usurpation, Robert's rebellion against the Targaryens, had aligned them with the Mad King. After the war, they lost most of their lands, wealth, and nearly all their power, with Earl Raymond Derry reduced to Sir Raymond. Gazing at the black farmer's banner, a bold idea surged into Ian's mind. Ian realized that he had been mistaken last night. The Dane family had not yet met their demise at this time. However, it would not be long before Raymond and his son Linman would both fall victim to the hands of the Mountain during the ambush at the Actors' Beach and the War of the Five Kings, marking the true end of the Dane lineage. Yet, what if a certain Ian Harwin, the illegitimate son of Count Raymond, were to emerge at this juncture? Ian squinted his eyes, pondering whether he was becoming addicted to the role of a bastard. While Raymond was alive, he could certainly expose him, but Raymond's days were numbered. And even if he lived, how could he possibly know that there was an illegitimate son across the sea? The last descendant of House Targaryen held a significant fondness for the Dane family. Daenerys's most vivid memory during her flight was of the Red Keep instructor named Willem Dane, who had led her and Viserys to safety on Dragonstone, and then to Braavos. Viserys firmly believed that upon his return to Westeros, the Dane family would steadfastly support the rightful heir's return. Thus, the identity of the Dane bastard would serve as a stepping stone for him to pledge loyalty to the sleeping dragon, and Viserys' acknowledgement would provide a legal basis for him to operate under the title of Count Dane after the family's fall. After all, Westeros was a land that placed immense value on lineage. Centuries-old noble families garnered more respect than newly risen upstarts. The more Ian contemplated, the more exhilarated he became, understanding that his success in legitimizing his identity hinged entirely on his acting prowess. However, the path to legitimacy was fraught with peril. Ian quickly quelled his elation, allowing his steady temperament to reassert itself. To seek legitimacy too hastily would render him a target for players. Patience was essential. He could first familiarize himself with the Mother of Dragons, allowing her to learn of his status as a Dane bastard. When the time came for him to publicly disclose his identity, he could approach her for her blessing, thus securing a surname. How delightful that would be. Wait, was he truly foregoing the idea of killing her? Ian scratched his head in confusion. My lord, others are arriving, Rolls said, stepping beside Ian and interrupting his thoughts. Do they hail from the same place? Ian inquired, following Roll's pointing finger toward 4 knights clad in similar attire to Roll and his companion. Unlike Roll and Case, however, these 4 possessed their own steeds. Perhaps they had been given insufficient gold dragons, hence their direct arrival with coin pouches, while Roll and Case were relegated to a cart. Ian accepted the 200 gold dragons they brought, and then spent 80 to hire them. The rate of 20 gold dragons per individual per year was grossly inflated, as one could procure all their gear for about 7 to 8 gold dragons, and most knights hardly earned enough in a year to buy their own equipment. Yet Ian felt no loss. It was evidently the sole means for players to acquire top-tier troops in the early stages of the game, as each completed quest or player kill allowed for the recruitment of 2. Roll nodded, acknowledging Ian's inquiry. They hailed from the same origin. Ian discerned from his demeanor that he was reluctant to elaborate further, thus he refrained from pressing on. In recent days, Ian had encountered a myriad of facets of this world, and he understood the imperative of not perceiving them merely as tools. Each individual harbored a narrative, including the couriers dispatched by the system, who were evidently not mere automatons. They likely originated from an organization established by game designers within this realm, Ian conjectured. Who among you possesses the greatest strength? Ian inquired once more. The others turned their gazes towards the silent figure of Kess, who had not uttered a word since his hiring. It was Roland who had been communicating on his behalf. Kess was a formidable man, his arms nearly twice the girth of Ian's, and upon his back rested a double-handed sword forged from steel, a stark contrast to the lightweight Valyrian swords. Heavy enough to be burdensome. He lacks a tongue, Roland finally remarked, having observed Ian's prolonged scrutiny of Kess, but he is undeniably a formidable fighter, unafraid to compete even in the King's Grand Tournament. May I view their data profiles? Ian queried mentally to Annie. Negative. The intimacy feature unlocks only after reaching level 3 of the system. Profiles can only be accessed for companions with an intimacy level above 50, Annie explained, then added, however, the disparity in data increases with higher-level characters. For top-tier classes, a 10-point difference in attributes is considered normal. Roland and Kess, as supplementary rewards for the First Blood quest, were naturally assigned stronger individuals for delivery, Annie continued. Them? Beyond the scope of access, Annie replied mechanically. By the way, I find you rather dull now. Akin to a voice assistant. Are you trying to provoke me into scolding you? Dream on, she retorted. All right then, Ian nodded at Roland. According to Annie, Roland was likely the strongest aside from Kess. Since Kess could not speak, Roland would assume the role of captain for their group. After stating this, Ian tentatively asked the others, do you have any objections? After all, anyone here could easily overpower him. The knights shook their heads in unison, and Kess clearly had no dissent. Then it is settled, Ian sighed in relief, fearing potential discord among them. Fortunately, they appeared to be rather taciturn. Oh, by the way, I may undertake some actions that you might find peculiar, perhaps even dishonorable. You wouldn't object, would you? We are not knights, Roland replied, merely wielders of such equipment. Moreover, the High Priest has instructed us to obey our employer's commands. They are specially trained player rewards, loyal as the innocents, Annie elucidated in Ian's mind. Very well, Ian nodded. Now we must embark on a task, to locate the blacksmith of Derry City. By the way, I am Ian Haverwin, and it is a pleasure to make your acquaintance. Note: 1. The term Sleeping Dragon is a playful moniker for Viserys, as he often taunted his sister Daenerys by claiming, "You have awakened the wrath of the Sleeping Dragon." 2. Haverwin, a surname associated with the bastards of the Riverlands. 3. Regarding the size of the continent of Westeros. The venerable Mr. Martin once remarked that it is comparable in area to South America. However, this notion seems to be a considerable pitfall, as this book adopts a calculation based on a data point from netizens, estimating Westeros at approximately 221,700 square kilometers, derived from the distance of 60 miles between Black Castle and Castle Casterly. Chapter 13. King's Landing. As Ian and his companions descended southward along the King's Road, they entered the city through the Gate of the Gods. Derry City did not present any armor that satisfied Ian, hence he refrained from purchasing equipment, instead acquiring 2 horses for Roll and Kess, and instructing the blacksmith to melt down the lion's head from his sword, replacing it with the farmer's emblem of House Derry. Upon passing through the Gate of the Gods, Ian and his party traversed a bustling urban expanse, filled with opulent mansions, pavilions, barns, brick warehouses, wooden inns, marketplace stalls, taverns, graveyards, and brothels, each one seamlessly flowing into the next. Navigating through the broad, tree-lined avenues and commercial districts, they swiftly crossed Shoemaker's Square. The Red Keep, situated near the shores of Blackwater Bay, lay diagonally across from the Gate of the Gods, compelling Ian and his companions to traverse the entirety of the city to reach a modest inn, nestled close to the Red Keep, as per the bird's whispers. Ian beheld the majestic marble walls of the Great September of Baelor, with its 7 crystalline towers rising proudly atop the Visenya Hills. Conversely, on the opposite side of the Rennies Hills lay the ruins of a colossal dome, a remnant of the Dragon's Lair. Should one venture east from here, they would find Flea Bottom. At this intersection, Ian glanced eastward, recalling a mission known as Airdrop. Am I among the earliest arrivals in King's Landing? He pondered. Aside from players starting in King's Landing, few could have reached here before him. However, Flea Bottom was a labyrinthine network of streets, and the time it would take to locate that treasure chest therein was uncertain. Shaking his head, Ian urged his horse onward in a southeast direction, toward the now visible Red Keep, an immense and imposing fortress constructed entirely of pale red stone, where the golden-crowned stag banner of House Baratheon fluttered high above the gatehouse. Concealing the hilt of his sword deep beneath his cloak, Ian followed the mission's instructions and found Varys's informant within the inn. It was evident that Ian and his companions had caught the attention of this individual. He inquired about Ian's identity, to which Ian introduced himself and his companions as a band of mercenary knights. The informant indicated that he would consult his master. Not all mercenary knights possessed armor of such quality as theirs, yet neither were they entirely devoid of it. The informant could not unilaterally decide on their retention. After the informant departed, Ian and his companions waited in the inn for an extended period, until finally, someone approached them. Regrettably, he was unable to meet with the esteemed information director as they had hoped. Instead, it was the informant who returned with a response. He conveyed that Count Varys welcomed anyone willing to serve him, yet the deposit required was a mere 10 gold dragons. Upon returning with the heads of the 2 vile dragons, they would receive a substantial commission of 1,500 gold dragons. For an assassin, this was indeed a hefty reward. Yet Ian remained indifferent, for what truly piqued his interest were the system rewards for this optional quest. Thus, he refrained from bargaining or questioning Varys' ability to pay and, after accepting the task, promptly departed the inn, heading towards the port. He was eager to leave King's Landing, for as the airdrop task progressed, the influx of players would only increase, and it was well known that, in the early stages, players were invariably dangerous and unpredictable. The port of King's Landing boasted over 100 docks lining the waterfront, with countless vessels moored therein. Ian felt a sense of nostalgia. Such prosperity likely represented the zenith of the Western world during the medieval era. As he entered the docks, he was surrounded by fishermen, sailors, and merchants, with ships from Bravos, Pintos, and lists continuously unloading goods. Ian was in search of a passenger ship, one that could expedite their journey to Pintos. Time was of the essence. The sooner he arrived in Pintos, the longer he would have to prepare, which was crucial for him. Stepping into the council chamber of the Red Keep, his feet met the plush carpet laid within. Peter Baelish, the Lord of the Vale, pulled out a chair and took a seat. Despite his diminutive stature, he possessed a strikingly handsome visage, his gray-green eyes glinting with a cunning light as they appraised the bald, rotund man seated opposite him. Do not bother looking around. Today, it is just the 2 of us. Varys, with his customary smile, has sent me, as Maester Pycelle is unwell, and the king has taken half the court and half the small council northward. So, what brings you to me today? Baelish ceased his idle observation and wandered to a corner of the room, where a wooden screen from the Summer Isles stood, intricately carved with a myriad of vibrant and lifelike exotic birds and beasts. What business could an information director have with a treasurer? Varys regarded Baelish with a knowing expression. Oh, the 7 hells, do not tell me you wish to discuss finances. Baelish lightly caressed the exquisite tapestries from Norvos, Coer, and Lys adorning the wall. Look at these. They represent wealth. Our king certainly has a penchant for spending. Such sentiments were unbecoming of a competent treasurer. Very well, Baelish shrugged. I presume you are currently assembling a cadre of assassins to deal with 2 lads. There are 2 young dragons, Varys corrected. I sought counsel from our beloved Majesty regarding this matter. He instructed me to personally eliminate every single Targaryen, to eradicate them completely, ensuring they perish as thoroughly as dragons do, and finally to urinate upon their graves. That is what he said. Very well, let me continue to speculate. This expenditure must be quite substantial, am I correct? Indeed, Varys nodded, but when compared to the treasury's debts, it is negligible. I require merely 10,000 golden dragons. A modest sum that you could easily procure from the generous Lord Tywin, the esteemed Tyrell, or even the Iron Bank of Bravos. You shall receive what you desire. Baelish did not refuse, merely hoping that Varys could manage the entire affair. Is there anything else? Yes, a trivial matter, Varys nodded. It concerns a series of homicides. Murders occur daily in King's Landing. However, if all the deceased share a common trait, it becomes rather unusual, Varys remarked. Oh, the victims include 2 mercenaries, a hedge knight, a merchant, and a lady who has just arrived in King's Landing. Their only shared characteristic is their recent arrival, and none are known to anyone. An intriguing tale. Baelish replied absently. Perhaps our Minister of Justice, Lord Renly, would find it more compelling. Oh, but no, he shows little interest beyond handsome men. And he is currently in Winterfell. Therefore, we require someone to handle this matter. Is funding necessary? It should not be. Oh, then it is of no concern to me. Farewell, Varys, my friend, Baelish said as he departed the council chamber. Chapter 14. The ship to Pintos, 7 men, 7 horses. Aegon paid a total of 200 silver stags for their passage, embarking on what would be a lengthy voyage across the sea. Aegon had meticulously planned their endeavor. Upon arriving in Pintos, he would seek out a morally dubious blacksmith to imprint the sigil of Aegon's sword hilt onto all his companions, and then proceed to the estate of the sleeping dragon, visiting in the guise of Aegon Rivers. Whether to eliminate the last 2 Targaryens or pledge allegiance to them once more left Aegon in a quandary, a conflict he had never truly resolved. Nevertheless, he decided to first travel to Pentos and adapt to circumstances as they unfolded. Pentos, Aegon recalled, was one of the 9 free cities, situated on the western continent of Essos, across the sea from Westeros, and was the closest of the free cities to King's Landing. The journey from there to King's Landing was less than 1/5 of the distance that Daenerys would cover when departing from Slaver's Bay, making it arguably the most advantageous position outside Westeros in the contest for the Iron Throne. Moreover, Pentos was the most densely populated city among the 9 free cities, engaging in maritime trade with the 7 kingdoms and the Jade Sea, and also facilitating overland trade with Volantis and the Dothraki. The crux of the matter lies in the peace treaty signed after the Pentos was vanquished by the Braavosians, which stipulates that the Pantosians are forbidden from possessing more than 20 warships, hiring mercenaries, or maintaining a military force beyond the confines of their city guards. Thus, the grand city of Pentos, encircled by towering walls, is in truth rather fragile, a prosperous yet vulnerable metropolis. At this moment, Ian conceived a bold notion. Could it be possible to seize this city? The weakness of their military strength did not deter Ian from harboring such audacious thoughts. As a contender for the Iron Throne, Pentos was hardly an unattainable ambition. Although his system was merely an ordinary auxiliary one, shared by all players and offering limited assistance. This was precisely the essence of the game for Ian. After all, everyone is playing, so why be preoccupied with cheat codes? Do the 4 great generals truly bring joy? Ian harbored doubts. The Prince of Pentos was but a figurehead, with the real power wielded by the governors. Whenever Pentos suffered defeat or faced poor harvests, the governors would slit the prince's throat, offering him as a sacrifice to appease the gods. In the annals of war between the Pantosians and the Braavosians, 4 princes had been sacrificed in a single year, and chuckled and asked, "So, do you still wish to be the Prince of Pentos?" "No. I mean, I want to truly conquer this city, not to be some sort of mascot prince." Ian clarified, "You certainly have the audacity to dream," and paused. "Well, you've always been a bold thinker. To be honest, I was skeptical of you at first, but you continually surprise me with your unconventional moves. And you even secured first blood. Your odds have now surged into the top 10. Top 10? Shouldn't I be in first place by now? Do not underestimate the other players, alright? This game doesn't solely depend on system tasks for progression." "Ah, so there are indeed skilled players." Ian's mood darkened considerably. "Wait a moment. What did you mean when you said you were skeptical of me?" he suddenly inquired. "What else could it mean? Our rewards are tied to player performance. If you were matched against someone with the worst odds, wouldn't you be frustrated?" And replied with indignation. Ian blinked. "Aren't you in the same boat? There's a reward? Do not engage casually with the system. Call on me only when necessary," and concluded their conversation with that remark, plunging them back into silence. "Well, we'll discuss it further upon our arrival in Pentos." Ian decided not to press the matter, leaning against the ship's railing and gazing into the distant horizon. The sun hung low at the meeting point of sea and sky, casting a golden hue upon the water. The waves lapped against the vessel beneath Ian's feet, reminiscent of all medieval ships, which had low gunwales. When larger swells approached, they often splashed water, sending a refreshing chill through Ian. Though summer has yet to bid farewell, winter is undoubtedly approaching, Ian mused. The elderly captain, with his grizzled beard, scrutinized Ian for a considerable time before finally uttering a single word, "Sir." "Good day to you." Ian replied courteously. "Forgive my boldness, but may I inquire what assistance I might offer you on your journey to Pentos?" The old captain could not discern Ian's true identity. The young man before him was garbed in a silk robe and accompanied by 6 knights. At that moment, Ian bore no sword. He had entrusted all his weapons to Royale, resolved to masquerade as an unarmed nobleman. "Indeed, I seek to acquire certain knowledge," Ian replied with a smile. "I am Ian Fleur, and for reasons we both understand, I am unable to inherit my father's title. He has provided me with a sum of money, allowing me to venture to Pentos with some of my loyal knights for trade, hoping to unearth a future of my own there. What recommendations might you have for me regarding Pentos?" "For business, it would be wiser to consider Braavos," the captain suggested. "The air in Braavos is far more liberated, whereas Pentos has only recently emerged from the shackles of slavery. Power remains firmly in the hands of the governors. And without establishing good relations with the 40 families of Pentos, expanding one's business there can prove exceedingly challenging. Nonetheless, I am resolute in my desire to go to Pentos," Ian asserted with conviction. "Oh," the old captain nodded in sudden realization, quickly piecing together why this noble bastard would require such a retinue for his commercial endeavors. The profits from the slave trade in Pentos indeed far surpassed those in Lys or Myr, although Pentos was compelled to abolish slavery following its defeat by Braavos. The market for slaves still thrived, and the nobility of Pentos remained enamored with the practice of slavekeeping. Ian recognized the captain's misunderstanding but chose not to clarify. Instead, he merely smiled and gestured for him to continue. Encouraged by Ian's affirmation, the captain's smile broadened. However, as I mentioned, conducting business in Pentos is inextricably linked to the governors. Only with their support can we discover ways to circumvent the prohibition on slavery. Thus, Ian produced a gold dragon, its crimson gleam radiating brilliantly in the sunset. Do you possess any means to introduce me to a governor? I would be delighted to serve you, my lord. The old captain bowed deeply. Note: Flor, a surname denoting a bastard from the Riverlands. Chapter 15. The Banquet of Illyrio, Part 1. The fragrant aromas of hot peppers, sweet lemons, and cinnamon wafted through the air. Ian donned ornate plate armor he had procured in Pentos, bringing only Royale by his side. After relinquishing their weapons, they successfully entered the residence of Governor Illyrio, having expended a total of 50 gold dragons for this opportunity of introduction. In the audience chamber adorned with stained glass, Ian scarcely had the opportunity to meticulously observe the narrative of Illyrio's fall etched upon its surface before the sharp voice of a eunuch pierced the air. It was Viserys III of House Targaryen, king of the Undulls, the Rhoynar, and the First Men, sovereign of the Seven Kingdoms and protector of the realm. His sister, Daenerys, the princess of Dragonstone, born of the storm. Accompanying them was Illyrio Mopatis, the governor of the free city of Pentos. Ian's gaze shifted toward the entrance, where a throng of individuals was entering the hall. Leading the procession was a young man with a mane of silver hair, his violet eyes striving to maintain a level gaze ahead, his resolute yet haggard visage adorned with a somewhat affected gravity. He endeavored to present himself as a king. Ian mused. Trailing behind Viserys were the extravagantly dressed Governor Illyrio and the petite Daenerys, who wore a deep purple silk gown, crowned with jewels. Her alabaster arms encircled by gold bracelets embedded with amethyst, while a heavy gold necklace inscribed with ancient Valyrian script weighed heavily upon her neck. In that moment, she bore little resemblance to a princess. Rather, she appeared as a mere commodity, for today, indeed, she was one. Her brother Viserys intended to barter her for thousands of roaring warriors from the undefeated call of the Dothraki, seeking to reclaim their ancestral lands. Daenerys timidly followed her brother, her eyes wide with wonder as she surveyed the throng in the colonnade and the ivy-clad courtyard, which was filled with towering Dothraki Khalasar, mercenary assassins from various city-states, red priests who did not worship the Seven, and even dark-skinned island lords from the Summer Isles. Illyrio whispered to the siblings. The three standing over there are the blood riders of Khal Drogo. By the pillar are Morocco and his son Rhaego, while seated is a knight named Ian Hawthorne, who claims to represent House Dane to bestow blessings upon the true dragon. Initially, Illyrio had intended to introduce Ser Jorah Mormont to Viserys at this moment, but the 50 golden dragons had swayed the steward's decision. House Dane? A flicker of surprise crossed Viserys' violet eyes as he regarded Ian and his companion. As I mentioned, the Seven Kingdoms are filled with your loyal subjects, awaiting your return to rule over them. Illyrio inclined slightly. After the banquet, let him come to me. I wish to reward those who remain faithful. Viserys exclaimed with rising excitement, then turned to Illyrio in a manner akin to seeking guidance. I should do this, am I not? I should reward my followers? Certainly. You are a true dragon, a rightful king, and generosity and mercy are qualities befitting a sovereign. However, this does not extend to those traitors. Viserys suddenly erupted in fury. I shall slay the usurper, and the Lannisters, they will learn that stealing from the true dragon comes at a price. They shall pay dearly. Indeed, they shall. Illyrio spoke with a tone of utmost respect, albeit laced with a hint of perfunctory dismissal that rendered Viserys indignant, yet speechless. He then turned his gaze towards Daenerys, gently patting her bare shoulder. Dear princess, behold, there stands Khal Drogo himself. However, Daenerys had no desire to gaze upon Khal. All she yearned for was to escape and retreat to the solace of home. Upon concluding his words, Illyrio approached Khal Drogo to convey his intentions, while Viserys seized the opportunity to draw Daenerys aside. Have you seen how long his hair has grown? He inquired. Khal Drogo towered over the others present, his oiled locks cascading far beyond his waist, even brushing against his thighs. Whenever a Dothraki warrior was vanquished in battle, they would sever their braids as a mark of disgrace. Observe his hair. Khal Drogo has never tasted defeat, and you shall be his queen, Viserys asserted to Daenerys. As Daenerys regarded Khal Drogo, she noted his formidable and austere countenance, with eyes as cold and dark as onyx. I do not wish to be his queen, Viserys. I implore you, I beg of you, I cannot bear it. I long to return home. Daenerys whispered earnestly. She was terrified of Khal, of his penetrating gaze. Rendered utterly distraught. Home. Viserys' voice dropped to a hushed tone, yet Daenerys could discern the fury within. Pray tell, sister, to which home do you refer? Our home has long since been usurped. He pulled her into the shadows, away from prying eyes, his nails digging into her skin with a fierce grip. Which home do you propose we return to? He repeated, his tone menacing. Daenerys, paralyzed by fear, could only lower her gaze, tears brimming in her eyes. The home she envisioned was Illyrio's dwelling, yet she understood that her brother's conception of home encompassed King's Landing, Dragonstone, and the entirety of their lost kingdom. Viserys' grip tightened further, compelling her to respond, but she merely bowed her head, overwhelmed with sorrow. Your Majesty, allow me to extend the blessings and utmost respect of House Dane of Dorne on your behalf, came the voice of Ser Ian as he approached Viserys. His words liberating Daenerys from her plight. For Viserys promptly released his fingers from her, turning his attention towards Ian, striving to present himself with regal composure. You did not mention loyalty, Viserys remarked, a note of irritation in his voice. The loyalty of House Dane requires no verbal affirmation, my lord, Ian replied, slightly bowing his head, exuding both resilience and deference. I lost 3 uncles in the Battle of the Trident, who fought valiantly for your brother, Prince Rhaegar. Until the last breath. Another uncle safeguarded you and your sister, Ian continued, casting a warm smile towards the now composed Daenerys, protecting you both as you fled to Braavos. I recall these deeds well, Viserys nodded, his demeanor softening somewhat. Rest assured, the loyalty of House Dane shall be rewarded on the day the true dragon returns to the throne. Ian gazed at Viserys with an almost fervent intensity. Viserys, momentarily taken aback, nodded slowly and echoed, on the day the dragon truly returns to the throne. Chapter 16. The Feast of Illyrio, Part 2. We all await the arrival of that day. Ian respectfully recounted the words of Illyrio that resonated in his memory. Waiting for the Targaryen banner to once again grace King's Landing. In the rustic villages across the realm, men secretly raise their glasses in your honor, while women clandestinely sow the banners of the fiery dragon. The lords are eager for your triumphant return, and when that time comes, we shall all rise in rebellion, following our rightful king. Indeed, I am aware of this, and I recognize your loyalty, Viserys nodded, not doubting Ian's words, for he had heard similar sentiments expressed by Illyrio on numerous occasions. A smile graced Viserys' face. He relished conversing with Ian, and the fervent admiration and awe in Ian's eyes bolstered his belief that he was indeed a true dragon. In Ian's gaze, he saw hope, the Iron Throne beckoning him, and a future where the 7 kingdoms would once again prostrate themselves at his feet. However, he had no time to continue his conversation with Ian, as Illyrio approached him with a broad smile, accompanied by the undefeated warrior, the Horse Lord. Come find me after the banquet. I wish to hear more tales of Westeros. Viserys said hurriedly to Ian, then turned to his sister, nervously instructing her, smile at him, and stand tall. Dany cast a quick glance back at Ian, then smiled, straightening her posture as she followed her brother toward Drogo. Are you upset? Ian's mind echoed with Annie's playful voice. Upset about what? Ian pondered as he moved to a corner table, indulging in a slice of local Pantos cake and sipping a goblet of Muscat wine from Volantis. Watching little Dany marry another? She is not yet 14, Annie coaxed, her tone encouraging. Did you not see how pitiful she looked just now? Do you not feel any sorrow? I suspect you are urging me to intervene, Ian replied, continuing to drink from his goblet. But should I betray even a hint of intent to oppose them, our fortunes would be jeopardized. I wonder if you can see outside. Look at those Pantos guards. Those Dothraki horse lords and blood riders. I hardly think this is the opportune moment to act against them. Do you still wish to confront them? Why not? Do you think my recent performance was mere jest? After much contemplation, I have concluded that Daenerys is our greatest obstacle in claiming the Iron Throne, and she is a woman who cannot be controlled. Ultimately, it would be prudent to devise a solution sooner rather than later. After the banquet, Viserys will summon me, and I hope to find an opportunity to eliminate them. Well, I may need to offer you some advice, Annie said, suddenly feeling a bit hesitant. I'm listening. Imagine, if you will, that you have successfully slain Daenerys. In such a scenario, dragons would cease to exist, and the mother of dragons would be no more, effectively eliminating the most compelling aspect of this tale. Do you believe the organizers of the contest would escape unscathed from such an act? And yet, do you still desire that grand prize of $1 million? A bead of cold sweat appeared on Ian's brow. I wonder if this revelation aids you in solidifying your resolve. And, clearly attuned to Ian's emotional turmoil, cheerfully remarked, Wait, are you truly considering this? You seem rather peculiar. This time, Ian offered no response, his mind returning to a state of silence. Nevertheless, he had indeed reached a conclusion. He would abandon Varys' mission in favor of swearing fealty to Viserys. His decision was not born from a fear of retribution upon the organizers. Rather, it stemmed from the words of that elderly Brit before entering the game, urging them to deliver a thrilling contest. Would a competition devoid of the Mother of Dragons still hold allure? As I prepare to take action, might I encounter various protagonist-like retributions? Could I be unexpectedly discovered by guards, apprehended by Mormont, or even struck down by a sudden act of divine justice? Who can say for certain? Ian gently caressed his chest, pondering how he had resolved to become Voldemort, only to momentarily lose himself in the notion of becoming a superhero. The invincibility of the Mother of Dragons is a shared dilemma faced by all players. What advantage do I gain from hastily resolving this issue? You possess abysmal taste. Compared to our exquisite Pantos vintage, the beverages of the Valantians are akin to horse urine. A young man approached Ian, snatching the glass of Valantian wine from his hand and replacing it with a fresh cup filled with Pantos amber liquor. Do try this, he enthusiastically urged, bringing the cup to Ian's lips. Lost in thought, Ian failed to notice the young man's approach until the cup was suddenly thrust towards him, causing him to startle and hastily overturn the goblet. The amber liquid splattered across the pristine white silk of La Ziho Court's robe. Ian had been careless. He understood that. Much like in Westeros, guests possessed the right of hospitality, and murder at a banquet was a grievous sin. Yet, could there be those willing to take such a risk? Ian eyed the young man warily. Did he deduce I am a player merely from witnessing my conversation with Viserys, and now seeks to poison me? La Ziho Court initially regarded Ian with shock and confusion, but as he caught sight of Ian's vigilant gaze, that confusion transformed into fury. Enraged, La Ziho stepped forward and shoved Ian, his voice sharp as he proclaimed, I challenge you to a duel. How dare you suspect I would poison you? You have sullied the honor of the Hightower family of Gandroth. You have insulted the hospitable people of Pantos. La Ziho's outburst drew the attention of many surrounding them, who echoed his sentiments in agreement. Ian immediately realized his mistake. The youthful figure before him, appearing somewhat delicate and naive, was certainly not a mere player. Rather, judging by the many nobles present who recognized him, he must undoubtedly be a scion of the illustrious Pantos lineage. I must sincerely apologize to you, Ian said, striving to appear genuinely earnest. He could no longer afford to consider the risks of being discovered by other players. He had to provide a satisfactory explanation, lest he remain trapped in this parlor. The true king of the Seven Kingdoms had no power to protect him. I must apologize for my offense, Ian bowed once more, speaking with heartfelt sincerity. In truth, it was never my intention. Governor Illyrio knows that I am a loyal knight to the Targaryen family. However, the usurper would never permit us to cross the sea to pledge our allegiance to our king. He dispatched numerous assassins to eliminate us, which rendered me excessively anxious. The gaze of the onlookers towards Ian softened considerably, and some even bore expressions of respect. Ian had made the right bet. Most of the Pantos nobles invited by Illyrio harbored sympathy for the Targaryen dynasty. In this era, loyalty was indeed a virtue celebrated in song. Very well, Laji said. Squinting slightly, I forgive your offense. Ignoring the wine stains on his attire, he poured himself another glass of Pantos amber wine and drank it. Now we are friends. Ian dared not frown. He understood that he had no choice but to drink this wine. Should he refuse, his earlier explanation would appear insincere, implying that he still held doubts about Laji. A noble of Pantos surely would not resort to murder at a banquet, for he could devise 1,000 silent ways to make a foreign knight vanish. With this thought, Ian lifted the cup and drank it down in one go. Only after Ian finished the wine did a smile return to Laji's face. Excellent, my friend. How do you find our Pantos vintage? Laji asked enthusiastically, as if the previous conflict had never occurred. Wonderful. I must admit, this is the finest wine I have ever tasted, Ian remarked, his praise lacking sophistication, as he was not a connoisseur of wine and could not summon elaborate rhetoric to extol its virtues. Nevertheless, such compliments brought a broad smile to Laji's face. He casually placed a hand on Ian's shoulder. You are a knight, are you not? Yes, though perhaps not officially. I am not a formally knighted knight. Oh, what a pity. If Pantos had knights, I could persuade my father to knight you, Laji laughed. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Laji Hawcott, son of Governor Gowden Hawcott and heir to Geo Handarok. Ian Hawn, from Westeros. Ian extended his hand for a brief shake. But, suddenly, Ian felt a pair of fingers lightly scratching his palm, sending a shiver down his spine. Goodness. I thought this person was inexplicably trying to strike up a conversation with me, even claiming to bestow upon me a knightly title. Am I being targeted here? With the likes of Duke Lannister and the Flower Knight Lalos before him, Ian was not surprised by the emergence of such groups in this world, and in fact, he held no particular disdain for them. Yet, please do not set your sights on me, good sir. Ian discreetly stepped back. Is it because I am too handsome? Just then, as Ian was at a loss for words, the call of Gordon provided him with an escape. Lotzi, with an unwilling smile, remarked, though I have forgiven you, my challenge for a duel remains unchanged. You must accompany me for a bout tomorrow. With that, Lotzi cheerfully dashed away. Ian watched Lotzi's retreating figure and had to admit, the lad was rather good-looking. Ah, what am I saying? Have I been poisoned? Ian shook his head vigorously and downed a large cup of wine. Will you honor the appointment tomorrow? Roland approached Ian, who looked at him in confusion. The Harkett family holds significant status in Pantos. If you wish to establish yourself there, perhaps you have another option, Roland said meaningfully, glancing towards Lotzi and his father. He is a man, Ian said with a slight twitch at the corner of his mouth. Roland said nothing more, merely offering a mysterious smile before turning to leave. Ian blinked in bewilderment. By the time the banquet at the Illyrio estate concluded, the night had grown quite deep. The empty courtyard, echoing the end of the festivities, contrasted starkly with the twinkling stars overhead, rendering the Illyrio mansion even colder. To Ian's surprise, before Lotzi Harkett departed from the gathering, he made a point to approach Ian, handing him a note. Under the soft glow of the wall-mounted butter lamp, Ian discerned the writing on the paper. It was an address within Pantos, presumably a training ground, clearly indicating that the other party earnestly wished for him to keep the appointment. After tucking the note away, Ian exited the parlor and stepped into the courtyard, where moonlight bathed the ivy in a silvery sheen. The slaves of Illyrio, those who did not wear copper collars, busied themselves in the disarrayed courtyard, gathering the remnants of food and drink to dispose of together. This was not due to a lack of desire for these items. Slaves were in no position to be choosy. However, the nobles of Pantos preferred to discard leftovers rather than bestow them upon the slaves. Once slaves experience pleasures they are not entitled to, they begin to crave freedom. And such desires are perilous for the nobility. Pantos is a free city, yet for the slaves, their only distinction from those enslaved city-states lies in the absence of copper collars. Nobles have never concerned themselves with the prohibitions against slavery, for they are the nobility. Ian stood in the courtyard of Illyrio, awaiting the return of Viserys. During this interval of anticipation, he had logged into the system, relinquishing his task for Varys and instead choosing to pledge his loyalty to the sleeping dragon. Viserys, somewhat inebriated, incessantly questioned Illyrio, revealing his evident unease. Does Drogo not find her appealing? Why has he not taken her away? He inquired, is she too young? Would Drogo truly like her? Viserys rambled on, much to Illyrio's irritation. Meanwhile, Daenerys trailed behind them, her head bowed, too timid to speak. She sensed her brother's anger, perhaps directed at her for her perceived inadequacies in pleasing the call, or for other reasons. Regardless, she felt solely responsible. Yet what could she do? She was not even 14. Daenerys was filled with trepidation, fearing the wrath of her brother, the sleeping dragon, and the looming presence of the giant who would soon become her husband. Noticing Illyrio's silence, Viserys turned his gaze toward Daenerys, emboldened by his drink, determined to unleash his frustrations upon his disappointing sister. Why are you so useless? Why can't you make the call take you today? Illyrio had explained to him repeatedly that according to Dothraki customs, they must first hold a wedding on the plains. Drogo's failure to take Daenerys did not signify disinterest. Yet, Viserys would not heed this, his anxiety palpable. Until he secured the roars of those warrior men, he remained restless. Chapter 18 Daenerys seemed to sense something amiss. Her 10 fingers curled into her palms, her legs crossed tightly beneath her skirts. Your Majesty, there is no need to panic, Ian interjected, arriving at Viserys' side just in time. Drogo would not dare mock you. He has made a promise to you, and he will fulfill it. For no one trifles with a true dragon, and none can withstand the wrath of the dragon. Viserys paused, his eyes widening with urgency. Is that truly so? He asked, his voice tinged with hope. Indeed, Your Majesty, Illyrio affirmed. No one would dare jest with a true dragon, you may rest assured. A flicker of relief finally crossed Viserys' anxious visage, and a smile began to break forth. Yes, I am a true dragon. No one would dare deceive me, he chuckled, reaching out to gently pat Ian's shoulder. It is you who reminded me, my friend, my most loyal companion. It is you who restored my confidence. Daenerys gazed at Ian in astonishment. She had witnessed her brother's anger too many times, whether directed at her, the handmaidens, or even Lord Illyrio. Yet no one had ever so effortlessly quelled the fury of the sleeping dragon, bringing forth his smile. Ian, too, noticed Daenerys's incredulous expression, momentarily lost in thought. In the past, he often encountered such descriptions, where girls in their teenage years were portrayed as breathtakingly beautiful. Ian frequently scoffed at such notions. Yet before him stood a girl whom he could not adequately describe with any term other than stunning. Dany's silken, golden hair cascaded over her bare shoulders, and her violet-hued gown, complementing her striking violet eyes, appeared exceptionally delicate under the moonlight. A mere glance exchanged between them sent his heart racing. It was no wonder that Drogo was willing to trade a crown of the Seven Kingdoms for this girl. She truly was a natural beauty, Ian mused. The moment their eyes met, Dany immediately averted her gaze, her shyness evident, looking elsewhere. She was still just a young girl, mother of dragons, queen of Meereen, Khaleesi of the Dothraki, and the rightful ruler of the Seven Kingdoms, the guardian of all lands, the liberator, the breaker of chains. Ian vividly recalled the titles that awaited this girl in the future. The liberator of the enslaved, the Storm Queen of King's Landing. Yet now, she was merely a timid and insecure young girl. Perhaps her wedding to Drogo would mark a turning point in her life, a metamorphosis from princess to queen. What are you gazing at? Viserys inquired, noticing Ian's distracted stare. The future Khaleesi of the Dothraki, Ian replied, turning to Viserys. Your Grace, your sister will soon bring you over 10,000 Dothraki warriors. Please do not reproach her any longer. You are the true dragon. And a true dragon does not easily succumb to anger. A true dragon channels his wrath towards usurpers and regicides, turning them to ash. We await your return. You need not let such trifles disturb your peace, Ian stated. Indeed, you are right, Viserys nodded in agreement. My body is the hope of the entire realm. I should not allow myself to become angered frivolously. My people still await me, do they not? Of course. By the way, I recall that Illyrio introduced you. He mentioned your name, is Ian Hawthorne? Yes, I am a bastard. But you represent House Targaryen, Viserys frowned. Your Grace, in Westeros. A bastard must receive his father's name by royal decree, yet our throne has been usurped, and the true king of the Seven Kingdoms is far away in Pentos. Ian's emotions surged, his nostrils flaring slightly. My father has long desired to bestow upon me his surname, but he has no means to do so. Is he to seek out that usurper? Certainly not. Viserys roared. I am the one true king of the Seven Kingdoms. No one can steal from the dragon, for the dragon never forgets. Thus, I have traversed the seas, hoping to pledge my loyalty to you, your Grace. Ian knelt partially, declaring, my sword shall only be wielded for the legitimate king. Excellent. You shall be the first to swear fealty to me, Viserys exclaimed, his fingers trembling with excitement. A radiant smile gracing his face. I, Aemon Riverwind, do solemnly pledge my allegiance to you. I vow to safeguard your well-being, to offer counsel, and in times of peril, I willingly dedicate my life in your service. In the name of the seven gods, I swear this. I, Viserys Targaryen III, in the name of the Undulls, the Rhoynar, and the First Men, as the sovereign of the Seven Kingdoms and the protector of the realm, accept your fealty. Viserys suppressed his excitement. He could hardly recall the last time he accepted an oath of loyalty, for no one had ever pledged themselves to him before. Yet, this did not diminish the significance of receiving his first knight. When the true dragon returns to the throne, there shall undoubtedly be a place for you among the Seven Kingdoms. Rise, in the name of Aemon Daenerys. Aemon bowed once more, preparing to stand, when Viserys stepped forward, extending his hand to assist him. What do you desire? He inquired. Oh no. I should rather ask what I ought to bestow upon you as a reward for your loyalty, Viserys continued, not allowing Aemon to respond. You were born in the Riverlands. I ought to grant you the running waters, for that is what you deserve. We shall impale the treacherous members of House Tully upon our spears, Viserys declared fiercely, his violet eyes ablaze with the unique madness of House Targaryen. Perhaps you would prefer Casterly Rock? The Lannisters deserve their fate as well. Viserys rambled excitedly, his thoughts racing towards the crown that beckoned him. He was oblivious to the promises he was making, his knowledge of those ancestral cities limited to the tales of others. Yet, he cared not, for he was the king of the Seven Kingdoms. He possessed the authority to reward his loyal subjects with anything within the realm. This was the power of a king, the power of the true dragon. He was poised to demonstrate the generosity of a sovereign, as Illyrio had advised him. And he believed it wholeheartedly. Aemon stifled a laugh, indulging Viserys in his ramblings until, at last, the dual pressures of alcohol and fatigue overcame him, and he fell into a deep slumber. Illyrio had long departed, and servants carried Viserys into his chamber. It was then that Aemon found himself with the time to ponder his predicament. He understood that if even a single player had their eyes on the brother and sister, his cover would be compromised. But what could he do? Events seldom unfolded precisely as planned. Suddenly, Aemon felt a tug at his sleeve. Turning, he beheld Daenerys, her face adorned with a hint of anxiety. Chapter 19. Daenerys, Your Highness. Aemon slightly bowed. Sire, Daenerys awkwardly returned the gesture. She had learned the customs of Westeros, but had never had the opportunity to apply them. I am not yet a sire. I am merely a bastard, Aemon corrected gently. But my brother has just granted you a surname, so you ought to be the heir of House Daenerys, my brother's knight, Daenerys asserted. And also your knight, Your Highness. Aemon habitually flattered, but upon witnessing the joy that lit up Daenerys' face at his words, he suddenly felt a pang of regret. Deceiving a cruel and self-righteous tyrant inevitably carries a lighter burden of guilt than misleading an innocent young girl. Ian had resolved to accompany them to Westeros after Daenerys' wedding, yet the manner in which he sought to gain the trust of a child left him feeling somewhat shameful. Are you a relative of Uncle William? Do you all hail from House Dane? Daenerys inquired, having no recollection of the Dane family, save for the imposing figure of a gray-bearded knight. It was Sir William Dane who had stormed into the nursery with forsworn swords, rescuing her and her brother when Stannis invaded Dragonstone and began his massacre, leading them to safety in Braavos. Accompanying this memory was the most cherished recollection of her childhood. She vividly remembered the red-painted doors of the grand house in Braavos and the lemon tree outside her bedroom window. Yes, Ian replied, but my impression of him is rather faint. This was the truth, as his knowledge of the knight was limited to Daenerys' recollections from books. He had prepared an explanation. I was quite young during the War of Usurpers, and much of it escapes my memory. All they taught me was loyalty. Uncle William is a loyal knight. Daenerys nodded in agreement, her eyes brightening with hope as she looked at Ian. You feel the same, do you not? You came across the sea from Westeros out of loyalty? Ian's words were a self-serving boast, yet Daenerys seemed to accept them wholeheartedly. Although they had been in constant flight, journeying from Braavos to Meereen, then to Tyrosh, followed by Qarth, Volantis, and Lys, before finally settling in Pentos. Her brother often spoke of assassins pursuing them, yet Daenerys had never encountered a single one. She was not prone to suspicion. Moreover, Ian's demeanor was comforting, a warmth stemming from the loyalty associated with the Dane name, coupled with his 2 rescues from the wrath of Viserys dragons. While Ian appeared merely to express loyalty to Viserys, Daenerys sensed there was an ulterior motive to assist her. For reasons unbeknownst to her, she simply knew it. Without a doubt, my little princess, Ian remarked with a smile, aware that little princess was how William Dane affectionately referred to young Daenerys, using such a term to evoke her memories and elicit her favor. She is but a child, Ian told himself, attempting to diminish the guilt he felt for deceiving a young girl. Yet, Daenerys' smile shattered his self-deception. Her eyes were so beautiful, ablaze with fire and scattered with stars, devoid of the coldness one would expect from a mere pawn. Well, it is quite late, Ian said, shaking his head and daring not to meet her gaze. You should return to your chamber to rest. But I cannot sleep, Daenerys replied, pressing her lips together. I am soon to wed Khal Drogo. My brother says he is the reincarnation of King Aegon the Dragon, and he will help us reclaim our throne. He will, Ian assured her. However, he is truly terrifying. Everyone fears him, and I can see it. Dany expressed the deep-seated fears within her, thoughts she dared not share with her brother, as that would only awaken his wrath. She could not confide in Illyrio either, for everyone knew that his friendship was driven by ulterior motives. Thus, she was left to suppress her fears alone. But at this moment, she felt an instinctive trust in the knight before her. The queen required the counsel of the council. Yet the young princess could afford to act on intuition alone, a rare indulgence for young Dany. Ian's throat felt parched. To claim he did not wish to whisk away the girl before him and prevent her from marrying the Horse Lord would be a falsehood. At that moment, he yearned for a system that would grant him extraordinary abilities, or perhaps a cheat code to summon 100,000 Unsullied, to seize Pentos and sweep through the Dothraki Khalasar. But such thoughts were mere fantasies, and Ian let out a rueful smile. He finally opened his mouth. Yet all he managed to say was, Drogo will treat you well. You are to be his bride, the Khaleesi of the Great Grasslands. He will protect you. Really? Dany asked, skepticism lacing her tone. Do you trust me? Ian replied gently, ruffling Dany's hair. In that moment, she appeared not as a future queen, but as a helpless little girl. Dany did not resist Ian's transgressive gesture. His hand was as soft and gentle as Uncle William's, and she found herself nodding in trust. Go rest now, Ian told her. Things will get better. Oh, this time, Dany obediently nodded and departed. Illyrio's mansion boasted an excellent location within the city of Pentos, with a man-made river flowing through its backyard, merely 2 meters wide and crystal clear. Ian walked silently along the riverbank, gazing at his reflection in the water. suddenly feeling a pang of loneliness. After all, he was not of this world. Hisham, Fuhua, Hawan, Dayari. Ian recited the surnames he had crafted for himself, reaching into the water, watching as his reflection dissipated into nothingness. Ultimately, it was merely an illusion. In the beginning, Ian did not feel this loneliness, as he treated his existence as if playing a game. But as he encountered more individuals in this world, their presence felt increasingly real, and he suddenly sensed his profound isolation. For everyone in this realm seemed genuinely alive, not just Dany's every smile and frown, but even that fellow Viserys appeared flesh and blood, arrogant, cruel, volatile, mad, and vain. What a pitiable creature, Ian thought, yet he could not muster a smile. For he realized he was not even a pitiable creature. In facing each person, he wore a different persona. What was he? Stripped of these facades, what remained of him? Note: Karasa refers to a collective term in Dothraki for a group acting together, with each Karasa having a cowl. Chapter 20. The believers considering the potential feelings of solitude and negativity that players may experience upon traversing into another realm, we provide individualized support services. Annie's voice echoed in Ian's mind, interrupting his reverie. But you are merely one, he exclaimed. Can you truly comprehend my current emotions? Alas, I can only vaguely discern your feelings and accept the thoughts you have already formulated in your mind, Annie replied candidly. What assistance can you offer me? Let us analyze your emotions, she suggested. From your present circumstances, the loneliness you feel is not merely a sense of alienation from the world, but rather a profound sense of helplessness. A sense of helpless loneliness? Ian gasped. You initially believed you could confront everything in the game as a player, a master of your fate, yet you have suddenly found yourself ensnared within it, unable to treat everyone as mere characters. Furthermore, you possess a strong desire that remains unfulfilled. The convergence of these two emotions has birthed your desolation. Ian abruptly recognized the truth in Annie's analysis. It was indeed a poignant reflection of his inner turmoil. Especially when he had finally assured Daenerys that the King of the Night would treat her well, in that fleeting moment, he felt the most desolate, as if he were no longer a player but merely an ordinary hedge knight, utterly powerless and devoid of identity, a solitary figure in a vast world. You should strive to integrate into this realm, forge friendships. It will alleviate your sense of loneliness, Annie continued to advise. Ian remained silent for a prolonged moment before finally uttering a simple, thank you. It is part of my duty, Annie paused briefly. And aiding you in swiftly overcoming this is also beneficial for our rewards. It would be prudent for you to log into the system and familiarize yourself with your current game progress. Ian offered no response, merely closing his eyes and accessing the system. The upper right corner still displayed the current number of players, 96. Clearly, the meat grinder of King's Landing had yet to unfold in earnest. First, a congratulatory email appeared, notifying him of the completion of an optional quest. Reward: any new skill. Attribute points: 3, system experience, 200, click to claim. Ian clicked to claim the reward, allocating all 3 attribute points to strength. As for the new skill, upon clicking to use it, a lengthy selection page emerged. Archery, throwing, sprinting, mounted combat, wine tasting, poetry, playing, healing, fishing, blacksmithing, woodcutting. Ian's gaze ultimately settled on the final skill, magic. What is this magic? Ian inquired of Annie, eagerly rubbing his hands together in anticipation. Magic is merely a collective term. Players may choose from various systems, such as the Old Gods, the Seven, the Light King Laro, and the Faceless God. Upon selection, one must publicly declare their change in faith. After pondering for a moment, Ian concluded that the only trustworthy deity in this world appeared to be the Light King, while the Seven were merely a group of ineffectual beings. However, he contemplated whether converting to the Red God might hinder the unification of the continent of Westeros. Ian deemed it essential to approach this matter with caution, for even Stannis Baratheon failed to secure the throne under the banner of the Light King. What level of magic is required to resurrect someone? Ian inquired of Annie. Resurrection is not merely a form of magic, it requires devoutness. Only those chosen by the Light King, or those who have yet to complete their mission, may be resurrected. Curses work similarly, necessitating the deity's cooperation, Annie elaborated. The magic of the Light King predominantly revolves around fire, while shadow magic can only be learned at the Red Temple if one possesses the requisite magical skills. Ian scratched his head and turned his gaze towards the Faceless God. Is the transformation of a Faceless One considered magic? Indeed, she responded. A Faceless One can transform into a person, altering their height, physique, and voice. The higher the skill level, the smaller the flaws. A powerful Faceless One could even impersonate another for an extended period. What if someone mastered this skill? If they were to reach level 10, could they not murder a significantly strong player and assume their identity? Ian pondered. In theory, it is feasible. However, acquiring skill points becomes increasingly challenging as one progresses. Naturally, upgrading magic is exceedingly difficult. A Voldemort would find it quite arduous to amass sufficient points. Ian nodded. The magic of the old gods involves spirits. Upon learning it, one can become a shapeshifter, akin to Bran, possessing the ability to inhabit various animals. The higher the skill level, the larger the animal one can inhabit and the longer the duration of possession. Annie thoroughly explained. As for the followers of the Seven, well, what does well imply? Ian asked, perplexed. It simply means that no practical utility has been discovered yet, but you are welcome to experiment yourself, Annie replied with a serious demeanor. After much contemplation, Ian ultimately chose to become a follower of the Light King, as faith in a reliable deity seemed paramount. To speak frankly, the Light King undeniably stands as the most dependable god in this realm. Upon finalizing his choice, Ian glanced at his personal interface, attributes, strength 28, agility 15. Skills, swordsmanship level 7, horsemanship level 4, lance level 3, magic, fire magic level 1, system experience, 3001000. Is there no delivery for this quest? Ian inquired. Quests without tangible items do not come with deliveries, Annie responded. However, you are not at a loss. Most individuals cannot even access optional quests that reward new skills. The 3 quests you have encountered are either extraordinarily difficult, impose developmental restrictions, or carry significant exposure risks. I have undoubtedly exposed myself. Ian shook his head. Initially, I intended to privately pledge my allegiance to Viserys, yet unbeknownst to me, I offended the noblemen of Pentos at the banquet. And now the entire Pentos is aware of the existence of a bastard named Ian Daenerys. My plans to remain in Pentos are evidently foiled. I had hoped to change my identity upon concluding this mission, but many noblemen have already taken note of my lineage. They would never accept a bastard from Westeros to rule over them. Furthermore, the players are also aware that no such bastard exists, and once this news spreads, it is likely that someone will seek to assassinate me. So, what do you intend to do now? What can I do? I can only go along for now. If I can gain Daenerys' trust, my future will be brighter than that of most players. My only concern now is to guard against assassination. No one can brazenly kill me in Drogo's Khalasar. Following Daenerys, do you wish to let everything unfold as it may? To allow her to marry the Horse Lord, then lose her child and give birth to 3 dragons, only to follow her path? Annie inquired. Ian suddenly found himself at a loss for words. He certainly did not wish to let fate take its course. The thought of watching young Daenerys wed the Horse Lord was unbearable. That girl is so pitiable. But isn't this her destiny? The transformation from princess to queen is her fate. Chapter 21. The underground arena of Pentos, traversing the bustling streets of Pentos. Ian led Royale towards the location indicated in the letter. The somewhat dried-up sewage ditches along the roadside exuded the distinctive stench of a medieval city, prompting Ian to quicken his pace. This was a commercial street adjacent to the port of Pentos, where merchants vociferously hawked wares from Westeros, the free cities, and even from the shores of the Jade Sea. Ian did not linger. Instead, he made his way directly to the alley where Lotzi resided. It was an unremarkable building, and the wooden door appeared rather aged. After a moment's hesitation, Ian knocked on the door. It was opened by a eunuch, whose high-pitched voice and rotund figure revealed his identity. At that moment, Ian was clad in the armor of his sworn knight, Shag, as their physiques were similar. Shag had no reason to refuse Ian the exquisite plate armor worth 10 golden dragons in exchange for his own, even though he knew the potential dangers this might entail. They had always been indifferent to peril. Following the plump eunuch, Ian and Royale traversed a desolate corridor and descended the spiral staircase leading underground. The tallow lamps hanging on the walls flickered with a dim, wavering light, casting the shadows of the 3 onto the ground, Royale's elongated form stretching into the darkness. Passing through a door constructed of steel bars as thick as an arm, Ian finally arrived in the underground chamber, where the cold, damp air sent a shiver down his spine. In that moment, the noble scion of Pentos, Lacey, had chosen this particular location for their duel, prompting Ian to ponder the motives behind such a decision. Shadows bred conspiracies, and indeed, this place was a prime setting for assassination, Ian mused. Initially reluctant to attend, having relinquished his aspirations for advancement in Pentos, he ultimately heeded the rare counsel of Roar, who urged him to make an appearance. Though Roar provided no explanation, Ian chose to trust him. The typically taciturn companion exuded a sense of reliability. Stealing a glance at Roar, whose relaxed demeanor offered reassurance, Ian pressed onward. Before long, Ian discerned that they had entered a dungeon, as he observed a series of cells lining the corridor, each furnished with relatively clean straw mats, and housing muscular men shackled in heavy iron chains. A gladiatorial arena underground? The realization dawned on him. While Ian was aware of the Grand Colosseum in Myr, he had not anticipated such a venue in the so-called free city of Pantos. He maintained a stoic expression, silently trailing the eunuch. The corridor seemed interminable. Ian felt as though he had wandered for a century until the sudden eruption of fervent cheers alerted him that they had reached their destination. Passing through a bronze door inscribed with ancient Valyrian script, Ian was greeted by a world that was indeed a revelation. Contrary to his expectations of a dim, chaotic, and filthy underground arena, this venue exuded an air of sophistication. The space, though not vast, could accommodate perhaps over 100 spectators, while the central combat stage, resembling a colossal beast's cage, was suited for only 2 combatants. The surrounding rock walls were adorned with glazed tiles depicting ancient dragons and beasts. Sculptures of gold, jade, and marble encrusted with gems and crystals were strategically placed throughout the hall. The audience was sparse, consisting of approximately 20 individuals, with most of the sofas upholstered in horsehair and velvet remaining unoccupied. Judging by their attire, it was evident that they were all scions of Pantos nobility, currently cheering for a gladiator's exquisite strike upon the stage. Following their gaze, Ian glanced towards the combat arena, and the scene momentarily unsettled him. Although he had watched numerous bloody films, nothing could compare to the visceral impact of witnessing such violence firsthand. He reminded himself that this was the Middle Ages. One must adapt and learn to be even more ruthless than they. The victorious swordsman exited amidst the applause, showered with gold coins thrown by the young nobles. Ian found it curious that a captive gladiator would require gold, yet he refrained from voicing his thoughts, merely watching as slaves entered the cage to remove the mangled corpse, dispersing a layer of yellow earth over the remains. Ian, the knight of Westeros, truly keeps his promises, a melodious female voice chimed from behind him. Ian turned around, and a girl clad in a purple velvet gown caught his eye. Lotzi? Ian furrowed his brow, recognizing her as Lotzi, who yesterday had been obscured by her voluminous white robe, but now her form was elegantly accentuated by the gown. When did your hair grow so long? Lotzi, clearly noticing Ian's confusion, smiled and removed her exquisite wig, revealing the same cropped hairstyle she had sported the previous day. Ian was utterly bewildered. What are you, male or female? Surely this isn't a case of cross-dressing? My sister is just like this. Please don't mind. Another noble youth approached Ian, introducing himself. I am Lotzi Hawkett, he said, gesturing toward the woman beside him. This is my elder sister, Dylife. I detest attending those elderly gentlemen's banquets, so I often ask my sister to take my place. Ian blinked, finally grasping the situation. No wonder he had found the boy excessively delicate the day before. Turning his gaze to Lotzi, he noted the striking resemblance to his sister, though he sported an incongruous bushy beard and wore his hair braided like a Dothraki. Ian recalled that Dothraki who had not won a battle were forbidden to braid their hair, assuming this was the young man's form of amusement. It was no wonder he hesitated to partake in the Illyrian feast. Should his attire be seen by the cows, it could ignite a bloody conflict. Yet, as Ian turned his attention back to Dylife, he realized she was indeed a girl. What then did her playful scratching of my palm signify? Had my luck with romance finally arrived? Alas, being excessively handsome can be a burden. Why have you donned armor akin to theirs today? Dylife inquired. Aren't you the leader of those knights? No, Ian's mind instantly became alert. We merely share a camaraderie, united by our loyalty to House Targaryen as we traversed the sea together. Dylife frowned. Yet yesterday, you wore armor far more expensive than theirs. Perhaps it is simply that a starving camel from House Derry is larger than a horse. To render my oath to the king more formal, I purchased a set of intricately embossed plate armor. Ian began to contemplate that her intentions might revolve around an interest in the knights under his command. However, he would have to wait for her to speak first to discern her true purpose. Chapter 22. Prince Hazan Dylife turned to her brother, only to find him gazing back at her with a similarly puzzled expression. She shook her head, realizing her brother was unreliable and that she must devise a solution herself. Let us be candid, another young man approached the siblings. We are always sincere with friends. Indeed, young prince, Dylife replied with a slight bow, expressing her respect. Ian observed the youth, who was adorned in an exquisitely tailored satin robe, cinched at the waist with a magnificent belt adorned with gems native to Pantos, emanating a subtle fragrance of natural spices. Hazan Moharis, a young man, extended his hand for a brief handshake with Ian, the son of Prince Trig Moharis of Pantos. Ian's immediate impression of him was that he exuded a considerable degree of confidence. Although the title of Prince of Pantos was largely ceremonial, having long been stripped of its power by the governors, the deference shown by the esteemed offspring of the powerful Governor Hawcourt indicated that this individual was indeed remarkable. Curiosity piqued. Ian felt a desire to forge a connection, yet maintained the decorum of a noble knight as he replied, "As long as it does not contravene the chivalric code or harm my lord's interests, I am at your service, your highness. I appreciate that quality in you." Hazan replied with a smile. "To be frank, he gestured towards the young nobles beside him, require your assistance and that of your knights. We are contending with the Tetris family for the opportunity to present a gift on behalf of the young noblemen of Pantos at the wedding of Zagakeo in 3 days. The governors have opted out of this dispute, leaving it for us youngsters to resolve amongst ourselves." Hazan continued. Ian glanced at the arena, realization dawning upon him. "So, you have agreed to settle the gift-giving rights through a tournament?" "Exactly," Hazan nodded. "That is precisely why I hastily acquired this underground arena. Additionally, I have been spreading the word in the taverns of Pantos, recruiting skilled mercenaries, such as the swordsman you just witnessed. He is one of our recent recruits." Ian, somewhat puzzled, inquired, "If you have made such extensive preparations, why seek my involvement?" He perceived himself merely as an ordinary knight, and it seemed illogical for the esteemed Prince of Pantos to approach him. "The competition entails 7 battles, and we need to field 7 participants," Delif interjected, offering an explanation. "It has proven quite challenging to find enough capable fighters, especially since the members of my father's retinue are prohibited from competing." Delif leaned closer to Ian, her breath brushing against his face. "Particularly since Suda Tetris has enlisted a pair of twin water dancers from Bravos, who he claims can reliably secure 2 points. Ian maintained an outward composure, yet internally, anxiety began to surface. He had yet to engage in any genuine combat since the onset of this endeavor and lacked a clear understanding of his own capabilities and those of his fellow knights. Ding! A notification resonated in Ian's mind. Task triggered. Prince Hazan's request, and his voice echoed within his consciousness. This task was one initiated by player actions, not dictated by the system, and rewards were to be naturally earned through player endeavors. Task achievement and reward details. 1. Dispatch your knights to participate in the competition and secure a victory in each match, earning 1 point of honor per match. 2. Personally partake in the competition and achieve a singular victory, garnering 20 prestige and 2 points of honor. 3. Successfully assist Prince Hazan in obtaining the right to present the gift to Kao and stand beside Hazan during the presentation, earning 30 prestige. Additional rewards. The friendship of Prince Hazan and the Hawcourt siblings, along with the gold promised by Prince Hazan. The rewards are cumulative, with both prestige and honor acquired under the name of Ian Derry. Should the player alter their identity, however, their prestige and honor shall be nullified. "This binds me to this identity," Ian mused with a wry smile. Nonetheless, he found himself bereft of reasons to decline this task. For merely triggering it would enable him to complete half of the main storyline within the prestige and honor system. He certainly yearned to ascend to the 3rd tier of the system. After all, a higher level would inevitably bestow more formidable auxiliary capabilities. "We have investigated you," Prince Hazan declared. Ian furrowed his brow. Although he presently stood on foreign ground, being scrutinized so casually was rather disconcerting. Yet, this prince was remarkably forthright. "You and your companions comprise a total of 7 knights, and Delife has previously encountered one of them." Hazan continued without awaiting Ian's response. "She presumed you to be the leader among your group and thus recommended you to me." Ian signaled for him to proceed with his discourse. "Do you possess any means to persuade them to assist us?" "I can, but I must first ascertain whom you are referring to," Ian inquired. "They must be referring to Kess," Roar interjected. "He has traveled through the Essos continent and participated in numerous competitive tournaments." "I am unfamiliar with his name," Delife replied, shaking her head. "But if the Kess you speak of is the formidable behemoth wielding a 2-handed sword, then we are indeed discussing the same individual." Ian exchanged a glance with Roar, who nodded in affirmation. "So, you now wish for me to persuade Kess to join your ranks, correct?" Ian queried. Prince Hazan nodded. "Indeed. We have prepared 6 participants. We now require the addition of that powerful 2-handed swordsman. For this, I am prepared to offer a reward of 200 golden dragons." "What if we have others willing to participate?" Ian asked. "For each additional participant, an extra 200 golden dragons will be granted. However, to qualify, they must pass our trial, which entails defeating a member of our current team." Hazan paused momentarily, "But I must caution you. Competing against the men of Tetris is a matter of life and death. He will undoubtedly instruct his men to fight to the utmost. Likewise, should you prevail, do not hold back." "Very well, when shall we commence the trials?" Roar inquired. Later today, as not all of our members are present, you are welcome to bring your entire group, Hazan responded. Ian nodded in agreement, and after exchanging courteous bows, he departed the arena alongside Roar. Once the echoes of their footsteps faded within the corridor, Lacey finally spoke. I failed to comprehend why you would seek to ally yourselves with them, mere nameless and fallen knights. Do you have any idea how much they bribed his steward to gain entry to the Illyrian feast? Prince Hazan chuckled lightly. Do not doubt. That steward is one of my own. They expended 50 golden dragons as an entrance fee to the Illyrian banquet. According to Daenerys, the Knight Kess was not a true Westerosi, but rather a member of a group of wealthy, powerful, yet obscure knights. Do you truly believe they would be loyal to that worm, Viserys? Hazan squinted. Anyone capable of striking at those rebellious governors could be considered my ally. Chapter 23. A Game of Thrones. Where have you been? I have been searching for you. Just upon returning to the residence of the Illyrian governor, Ian was greeted by Viserys. The latter wore a smile, and Ian could discern no trace of that brutal, arrogant wretch in his demeanor. Adorned with a golden crown gifted by the Illyrian governor, meant for him to wear at the wedding of Khal, Viserys could hardly contain his eagerness to don it. From the sunny disposition on his face, it was evident he awaited compliments. Truly the essence of a king, Ian remarked, as Viserys desired. The people of King S Landing would be overjoyed to behold your visage. Viserys laughed, graciously receiving Ian's flattery, yet he stifled his emotions. For Illyrio had cautioned him that a true king must remain unruffled. One must not allow subordinates to easily discern one's feelings. The emotions of a true dragon must remain enigmatic. Viserys admonished himself, oblivious to the excitement that betrayed him through his smile. I have sought you for quite some time. Viserys continued. Just this morning, yet another knight pledged his fealty to me. You were correct. I have waited too long, and Westeros has waited too long. Viserys feigned sorrow, lamenting that he had kept his subjects waiting. I should have led an army back by now, just as I announced my intention to return to my homeland. So many knights have traversed the seas to swear allegiance to me. Perhaps I truly should not have delayed. Indeed, your grace, all await the return of the true dragon. Ian echoed Viserys' sentiment, though a sense of caution stirred within him. Was the knight who pledged loyalty the great Bear Mormont, or another player in this game? I should introduce you, Viserys said, taking Ian's hand. He is a remarkable knight, truly brave, yet has been sentenced to death merely for selling a few poachers to the slave traders of Tyrosh. With a scornful laugh, he added, Law? Ned Stark, that traitor, dares to speak of law? A man who would raise a sword against his king presumes to dictate how his vassals manage their private affairs. What a hypocrite he is. This indeed reflected Viserys' impression of Lord Eddard Stark of Winterfell, partly shaped by Illyrio's narratives and partly due to his accustomed perspective from growing up in Essos, where the existence of slavery was a commonplace reality. It was then that Ian realized the knight referred to by Viserys was indeed Jorah Mormont. However, he did not let his guard down, for any knight hailing from Westeros could potentially cast doubt upon his identity. Until the true demise of House Targaryen, his identity remained at risk of exposure. Should I devise a method to eliminate this Mormont? Ian pondered, after all. Jorah had come bearing Varys' mission to assassinate the Targaryen siblings. He had not yet changed allegiances, Ian reminded himself. It was implausible for him to fall for a mere 13-year-old girl. To eliminate him now would merely be to vanquish an adversary. Upon this thought, Ian chuckled to himself, suddenly finding the rationale somewhat absurd. He needed no justification. He was a player, and any threat to his existence deserved death. Jorah Mormont had once been a character Ian held in high regard. To be precise, he admired the entire Mormont family, including Old Bear, the Great Bear, and that young girl from Bear Island. Nonetheless, this did not deter Ian from his resolute decision to dispose of Mormont. For the knight's presence increased the peril of his own exposure and could jeopardize his standing beside Daenerys. In the Game of Thrones, one must either emerge as the victor or face certain death. There exists no middle ground. Those were Cersei's words, applicable to this world, not merely to the prominent figures, but equally relevant for someone of Ian's stature. I must adapt to the harsh realities of this world, he admonished himself. What is wrong with you? You are not paying attention to what I am saying. Viserys furrowed his brow before erupting in anger, realizing that Ian had been staring blankly while he spoke. You are not listening to me. Viserys seethed, feeling the dignity of the true dragon had been provoked. My apologies, your grace, Ian quickly interjected. I was contemplating the matter regarding the knight you just mentioned. Oh, if I am not mistaken, it must be Ser Jorah Mormont of Bear Island, correct? Ian inquired. Indeed. A true knight anointed with holy oil, Viserys responded. Since when has the North been graced with loyal servants of the true dragon? They are nothing but rebels. Ian exclaimed, striving to present himself with the utmost authority. What are you talking about? Viserys inquired, his expression filled with confusion. That Jorah Mormont is an assassin sent by the usurper. Ian declared loudly that wretched eunuch Varys promised him a pardon, contingent upon the blood of the last true dragon. He previously participated in Varys's underlings' ambush against us on our way to Pentos, during which we lost several brothers, and the fiercest among them was that Ser Mormont. I remember him vividly. Viserys' eyes widened in shock as he recoiled several steps, filled with horror. They wish to kill me? He muttered to himself, nodding in realization. Yes, they certainly wish to kill me. I am the last of the true dragon bloodline. As long as I live, the usurper cannot rest easy. Fortunately, we discovered you before he did. Otherwise, the consequences would have been utterly unimaginable. Ian exclaimed with fervor. Indeed, unimaginable, Viserys echoed Ian's words, beads of cold sweat adorning his brow. He had no reason to doubt the testimony of a Dairy and place his trust in a wanted Mormont, a treacherous usurper. They can only resort to the base act of murder to contend with the true dragon, Ian asserted, filled with righteous indignation. Alas, he is still by Daenerys' side. Viserys suddenly exclaimed, then clumsily drew his sword, calling for his knights to follow him. Just a moment ago, Ian had mistaken his anxious demeanor for a semblance of sibling affection, but Viserys' next words shattered his last illusion. She is worth more than 10,000 Dothraki warriors. Drogo has promised me that, if anything were to happen to her, who would I turn to for my army? Viserys declared. Chapter 24. Count the coins for me. In the courtyard of the Governor Illyrio's residence, Daenerys savored a rare moment of leisure after her midday meal. This was one of the few instances of respite she had left, for in a matter of days, she would wed Khal Drogo and accompany his Khalasar to the distant lands of Vys Dothrak, where she would meet the Dosh Khaleen, a council comprised of the widows of all deceased Khals governing Vys Dothrak. Vys Dothrak lay further away than the western free trade city of Qohor, requiring a crossing of the Dothraki Sea, a vast expanse of grasslands. Though why it was called a sea, Daenerys could not comprehend. She only knew it would be an exceedingly long journey. Then Drogo would grant her brother an army, and he would return home, reclaiming the Seven Kingdoms and his father's Iron Throne. Daenerys mused. But what of me? She pondered. It all seemed to have become irrelevant to her. She had been sold to Khal Drogo. Should I feel delighted by this? The subjects of the kingdom awaited Viserys. I must assist him in some way. I am of the blood of the dragon. Dragons do not know fear, Daenerys reassured herself. Yet, recalling the lessons imparted by Illyrio's handmaidens brought a blush to her cheeks, though fortunately, under the afternoon sun, it remained inconspicuous. I am of the blood of the dragon, Daenerys repeated, then stepped into the sunlight, allowing its warmth to caress her face, feeling utterly content. Thank goodness Viserys went to find Ian. Otherwise, he would never allow me the freedom to relish such an afternoon, insisting instead that I continuously learn how to please that horse lord. Suddenly, Daenerys seemed to hear a commotion. First the iron gate swung open, followed by hurried footsteps. She turned to see her brother entering, sword drawn, fury etched across his face, followed closely by several knights clad in light green armor, Ian among them. Dany felt a twinge of fear, uncertain of the unfolding events. Though she had often witnessed Viserys in a rage, this was her first encounter with such a tense atmosphere. Fortunately, Ian offered her a reassuring smile, at least indicating that her brother's wrath was not directed at her. Little princess, have you seen Ser Jorah? Ian interjected before Viserys could speak, addressing Dany. Yes, Dany nodded. He left shortly after my brother did. He must be stalking me. He is looking for an opportunity to kill me. Viserys roared, then turned to Ian, commanding, find him, Ian, and bring me his head. As you wish, your majesty. Ian replied with a nod before departing with the knights at his side. Dany remained in the dark, unwilling to inquire further. But she could surmise from Viserys' furious tirade that Ser Jorah was indeed an assassin. He seemed so kind, she thought to herself. Yet, she had no reason to doubt her brother and Ian. Since they asserted that Jorah was a hired killer sent by usurpers, he must be. When Ian located Jorah Mormont, he found him seated alone by the river, polishing his sword. Ian could discern the turmoil in his expression, as if he were grappling with a difficult decision. Ian understood what decision was at hand, yet it was one that need not be made, for Ian would bring an end to Jorah's journey, accompanied by 4 knights. With Kess and another yet unaccounted for, who were likely at the training grounds, Ian prepared for the confrontation. Although they were not up against Arthur Dayne, the legendary sword master who could easily fell 5 Kingsguard with a mere flick of his wrist. Jorah Mormont had once claimed the title of champion in the jousting tournaments of Westeros and was poised to triumph in the grand arena of Meereen. While Ian could not see Yora's statistics, he surmised they would not be low. A direct assault would be unwise. Ian wished to avoid casualties among his loyal sworn knights, for their unwavering allegiance represented his greatest asset. He needed to devise a cunning strategy to outmaneuver Yora. Before Ian could approach, Yora sensed his arrival, regarding him with a mixture of caution and curiosity. "Are you Ser Yora Mormont?" Ian inquired. "I have heard you pledged your loyalty to the crown." "Indeed," Yora nodded, studying Ian with a peculiar gaze before breaking into a sudden smile. "You refer to him as Your Majesty? Frankly, I never anticipated that the Targaryen family still had such loyalists. I hear you are the bastard of House Dane? When the crown granted me a surname, I ceased to be a bastard." Ian feigned indignation. "If someone were to concede," Yora chuckled once more. "I have not heard of any illegitimate offspring attributed to Reman Derry, but that is of little consequence." Yora shrugged his shoulders, surmising that you must be a bold adventurer, having come here upon hearing that Viserys would acquire thousands of Dothraki warriors, seeking a grand gamble. Am I correct? Ian raised an eyebrow, refraining from contradiction. He was aware that arguing with Yora would yield no fruitful outcome. "It appeared that my assumptions were accurate," Yora smiled. "And to be candid, I share a similar sentiment. Thus, we are destined to become friends," Ian replied with a feigned smile, fully cognizant of Yora's deceit, yet feeling no obligation to expose it. Instead, a novel idea suddenly materialized in his mind, one that could sell the other while allowing him to count his own profits. A fugitive and a wandering knight-esque companion, perhaps also the future Lord of the North and the Riverlands. Ian glanced at Yora's tattered armor, pondering such distant prospects. However, before contemplating those lofty ambitions, you might find yourself in need of some coin? Yora frowned, interpreting Ian's insinuation as a suggestion of his alleged illicit dealings with poachers, for which he was wanted by Ned Stark. "I believe you are mistaken." Ian discerned his thoughts. "My intention is to present you with a lucrative opportunity." Ian placed a hand upon Mormont's shoulder, revealing that Prince Hazan of Pentos had offered a remarkable sum of 200 golden dragons for each individual willing to fight on his behalf the following day, as he intended to compete with another young noble from Pentos for the honor of bestowing a gift to the newlyweds at the wedding of Drogo and Khal. 200 golden dragons? Yora's eyes sparkled. Indeed, the Prince of Pentos is quite affluent, as that sum could easily procure over 10 unsullied. And yet he sought to employ someone for but a single battle. "But they must be the strongest warriors," Ian corrected. "If you are inclined, join me tonight for Prince Hazan's selection trials. No one would refuse golden dragons, no one." Yora readily accepted. Meanwhile, Ian was inquiring with Annie whether, should Mormont win a match, he could be deemed his knight, thus bestowing a modicum of honor upon himself. Chapter 25. The trials. The crackling of the bonfire in the courtyard resonated, sparks dancing upward with the rising heat. Beneath the night sky, the underground arena was brightly lit, with 4 eunuchs stationed in the courtyard, continuously receiving mercenaries who had passed the initial assessment. The throng was so vast that Prince Hazan could not accommodate all within the underground arena. Thus he arranged personnel in the courtyard to evaluate the mercenaries who registered, granting entry only to those who succeeded in the surface trials. Ian had brought with him only Kess, Roar, and Mormont this evening, yet to be frank, he harbored confidence solely in Kess and Mormont to truly pass the assessment. As for himself, despite the enticing rewards for personal participation, his current attributes, strength at 28 and agility at 15, fell slightly short of the Unsullied S initial statistics, while the Unsullied represented a mid-tier class among elite combatants. In this context, the likelihood of Ian personally participating in the tournament appears exceedingly slim. Fortunately, he has successfully deceived Yora Mormont by entering under the guise of his own knights. As a result, he is poised to request permission from Prince Hazan to accompany him as a means of presenting 2 knights to KO, thereby maximizing his gains from this triggered quest. Before Ian could ponder whether his companions should also partake in the assessment within the courtyard, a eunuch approached them proactively, guiding them towards a staircase leading underground. This was not the path they had traversed that morning. Following the eunuch, Ian surveyed his surroundings, quickly realizing the discrepancy. Indeed, they were being led to a venue that was no longer the modest arena designed for the nobility, but rather a grander, chaotic arena filled with tumult. Multiple combat platforms were present, with the commoners and nobles of Pentos mingling beneath the stages, while attendants navigated through the throng, carrying trays brimming with silver coins to facilitate betting among the spectators. The eunuch led them through the crowd to the heavily guarded main grandstand, which afforded an excellent view of all 7 combat platforms in the hall simultaneously. Only Prince Hazan and Deliv Hawk were present this time, along with a few other lesser noble youths from Pentos, who, by comparison, clearly did not hold the same status. Ian scrutinized them with caution. Frankly, he remained perplexed by Prince Hazan's enthusiasm towards him. Given Hazan's resources, recruiting numerous top-tier warriors should not pose a challenge. A single knight, such as Kay's, ought not to warrant such attention. Nonetheless, the reality was that Prince Hazan was indeed invested, as evidenced by his insistence on having the eunuch escort Ian and his companions to the main grandstand, even seating Ian beside him. This unexpected honor left Ian somewhat astonished and drew envious glances from numerous young nobles of Pentos. There is no such thing as a free lunch. Hazan's bestowal of such privilege upon Ian surely came with an implicit cost, a notion Ian himself found hard to dismiss. Uncertain of Prince Hazan's intentions, Ian could only greet him with a smile. As for the future, he resolved to face whatever challenges arose. Case, having received his position through Deliv's recommendation, was not required to battle, but Roar and Mormont, unlike him, soon departed the main grandstand under the eunuch's guidance to prepare for combat. As for Ian, after observing approximately 3 or 4 matches from the grandstand, he witnessed even Roar narrowly defeated by a Coer Black Sheep warrior. Ultimately, Ian relinquished any desire to compete himself. Such a prestigious contest, with an entry fee of 200 golden dragons, was not a venue for a novice who had barely begun his journey. Even though his statistics were nearing those of elite units, mere superiority in rank was insufficient for participation in such a grand tournament. It demanded the very best among the elite. The loss of prestige and honor for missing the task's reward left Ian with a slight sense of disappointment. However, this paled in comparison to the anguish of witnessing Dany wed the king of the mountain. I am a Voldemort, Ian reminded himself. In the realm of A Song of Ice and Fire, Ian found himself enamored with numerous characters. The formidable Dawnblade Arthur Dayne, the oft-misjudged yet truly chivalrous Jaime Lannister, the evolving Daenerys Targaryen, and the cunning Little Rose, Marjorie Tyrell. His admiration for these characters was so abundant that he could scarcely enumerate them all. Yet, if one were to inquire who he revered above all, it would undoubtedly be Peter Baelish. Known as Littlefinger, a man who ascended the heights of power through sheer wit and cunning. Were it not for Bran Stark's three-eyed raven, the Stark family might have struggled to unveil his schemes. Fire and sword, iron and blood, these embody the romanticism of knighthood. Yet, Ian did not aspire to such ideals. His ambition lay with the Iron Throne, for which he was willing to take Littlefinger as his mentor. This was a game of power, not a tournament of knighthood. He mused, his gaze fixated upon Jorah Mormont as he stepped onto the arena. Mormont held his sword aloft, its tip directed at his opponent, arms raised to shoulder height, while his rival wielded a steel short axe in one hand and a round wooden shield in the other. The two circled the edge of the arena, each seeking a flaw in the other's defenses. Mormont's adversary was a dark-skinned, stocky, and fierce-looking slave warrior, whose agility made Mormont hesitant to launch a direct attack. Ian ceased his daydreaming and focused intently on the contest, contemplating how long he might last if he were to take the stage himself. They exchanged tentative strikes, the clash of metal eliciting sparks, yet both swiftly disengaged, resuming their circling dance. Ian counted as Mormont's sword struck the wooden shield twice, leaving shallow gashes and scattering a few wood chips. The wooden shield proved sufficient for defense. Even Mormont's strength could not easily cleave it. This recollection brought to mind their recent arrival in Pentos, when Ian had proposed equipping 6 knights with steel shields, only to be met with unanimous rejection. Many gamers harbor an inexplicable fondness for steel shields. However, in reality, during the medieval era, few nations issued them in abundance due to cost and the unnecessary weight that drained stamina. Unless one faced a behemoth like the mountain, a wooden shield sufficed. And in the presence of such a foe, even a steel shield would offer no salvation. A sudden uproar interrupted Ian's recollections. It was the dark-skinned boy finally making his move. He charged towards Mormont, confronting the iron sword head-on, and just as their weapons were about to collide, he executed a low slide. Chapter 26. The Prince and the Prince. The dark boy emitted a low, guttural battle cry, evading the downward strike aimed at his head by Mormont. Lowering his stance, he deftly skidded across the yellow sand beneath him, aiming his hand axe between Mormont's legs. Mormont reacted with remarkable swiftness. As the opponent slid, he raised his knee, driving the steel greave into the boy's jaw. Upon collision, the dark boy was sent flying, his teeth scattering across the ground. His treacherous axe, struck unexpectedly, veered off course, leaving merely a scratch on Mormont's plate armor. As the boy struggled to rise, still unable to wipe the bloodied sand from his face, Mormont's sword was already poised before him. Desperate, he flung a handful of sand towards Mormont's face. Seizing the moment Mormont turned his head to evade, the dark boy leapt up and lunged at Mormont's feet, yanking with all his might. The armored Mormont crashed to the ground with a thunderous thud, sending a cascade of sand into the air. Such a rogue tactic, Prince Hazan remarked, turning to Ian. Many knights of Westeros would undoubtedly scoff at this, yet it can secure victory. No, he cannot prevail, Ian replied nonchalantly, accepting a cup of amber wine that Daenerys offered. Are you jesting? Do you consider Mormont akin to a knight of Westeros? Does your little underground arena in Pentos dismiss the grandeur of the Meereen Colosseum? Indeed. As the dark boy seized the opportunity of Mormont's fall, he lunged at him, attempting to slit his throat with a dagger. Mormont, however, countered with a brutal headbutt, his helmet crashing into the boy's face. Seizing the moment when the boy could not open his eyes, he drove his knee into the boy's groin, sending him sprawling on the ground. Mormont rose, placing his foot firmly on the dark boy's right hand, where a sound emerged that only the boy could hear, the crack of his bones. Without mercy, Mormont snatched the dagger from his grasp and ruthlessly cut his throat. Seeing the astonished expression on Prince Hazan's face, Ian raised an eyebrow. He was no knight himself. Hazan, unperturbed, expressed admiration with a series of impressed murmurs, remarking to Ian, "This is precisely what I need. He is remarkable. He just dispatched a slave warrior I once purchased in Lys, a foe few of my father's guards could overcome. My friends are exceptional." Ian nodded in agreement. "Then why not step into the arena yourself?" Daenerys leaned closer to Ian, exuding a delightful fragrance. "I have high hopes for you. My sword is wielded solely for justice," Ian asserted, seeking justification. "I shall not partake in any conflict except to serve my liege, uphold honor, and protect the weak. If 200 gold dragons are insufficient to draw your sword, perhaps 1,000 would be a more reasonable figure." Hazan spoke with a confident smile. "This is not a matter of gold dragons. It is about my principles," Ian replied solemnly. "After all, there is no cost to posturing. Unfortunately, you have already pledged your allegiance to another." Hazan raised his goblet and lightly clinked it against Ian's. "Otherwise, I would certainly have made you my guard." Hazan paused before adding, "Of course, this does not prevent us from being friends. It is my honor to count the prince as a friend." "Excellent," Hazan nodded, seemingly satisfied with Ian's demeanor. "Then as friends, you shall provide me with 2 of the finest warriors for my match tomorrow. And I would like to extend an invitation for you to accompany me to the wedding of Zagakeo. It would be a great honor." Ian was eager for such an opportunity. 30 points of prestige was an exceedingly tempting condition. After that, Hazan ceased to speak and began to watch the competition with great interest, while Ian found no reason to linger. "Since my friend has passed the assessment, I shall take my leave," Ian said to Hazan. "Very well, go on, lest our little king suffer from sleeplessness tonight," Hazan remarked, casting a meaningful glance at Ian. Then continued, "Tomorrow's battle will not be held here, but at the prince's residence, to ensure the contestants' condition for tomorrow. Your 2 friends shall remain here to accompany me back to the prince's abode." Hazan's words, perfectly aligned with Ian's desires, caused Ian's throat to dry. He had been contemplating how to delay Mormont from returning to Illyrio's estate, in order to explain to Viserys that Mormont had been slain. If he could just keep the ruse until the match was over, Ian could eliminate Mormont, and everything would be concealed. However, as Hazan offered to keep Mormont behind, an ominous premonition arose within Ian. He dared not linger any longer and, after a hurried agreement, left the underground arena quickly with Roar. As they walked back to Illyrio's estate, Ian's heart raced wildly. He began to question whether his association with this enigmatic prince had been a grave mistake. Hazan's final, significant glance left Ian feeling apprehensive, especially in that fleeting moment when their eyes met. It sent chills down his spine, as though he bore no secrets before the prince. Does he know I intend to kill Mormont? Does he know that Viserys has ordered me to slay Mormont? Ian pondered, recalling the events of the day. He knows I want to kill Mormont. Ian repeated silently in his mind. Aside from myself and my knights, only Viserys and Dany are aware of this. Is there anyone else? Yes, the servants in Dany's courtyard at that time. They could very well have overheard Viserys' command. Was Hazan present among them? What exactly is his relationship with Illyrio? With such questions lingering in his mind, Ian returned to Illyrio's estate, unaware that Viserys had been waiting for him until the late hours of the night. Beside Viserys stood 2 swordsmen from Pentos, a defensive force that Viserys had requested from Illyrio after Ian's departure. Upon seeing Ian return, Viserys eagerly rushed forward and grasped Ian's hand. Is he dead? Did that assassin perish? Ian could discern a tumult of emotions within him, a blend of anger and fear. It is often said that when a Targaryen is born, the gods toss a coin to determine whether they shall be great or mad. Yet, in Viserys, Ian perceived neither greatness nor madness, only a wretched creature. Rhaegar is the last true dragon. Ian recalled this phrase. Certainly, Viserys could not compare to Rhaegar. However, while Ian once rationalized Viserys' ineptitude by attributing it to his impoverished beginnings, this notion dissipated after encountering Prince Hazan. The Prince of Pentos was merely a puppet, and his son was nothing at all, yet Hazan exuded an aura rivaling that of any schemer in Westeros. What, indeed, was Hazan's purpose? Why was he so fixated on a minor character like myself? What utility do I possess for him? These were the questions that perplexed Ian the most. I ask you, is Mormont dead? Viserys, interpreting Ian's silence as a sign that he had allowed the assassin to escape, became irate. Realizing Viserys was still before him, Ian immediately bowed his head, offering a respectful reply. Rest assured, Your Grace, we have dealt with the assassin sent by the usurper. He gestured toward Roland, who had flayed Mormont and hung him upside down from a tree. Viserys' countenance brightened once more. Excellent. Well done. It is a pity I could not slay him myself, but you have performed admirably. We must make the usurper aware that no matter how many assassins he sends, this shall be their fate. The usurper will meet the same end on the day the true dragon returns to the Iron Throne. Ian's eyes blazed with fervent zeal as he deliberately chose words that would please Viserys. Although Viserys had never diligently practiced swordplay, he was cruel and bloodthirsty, reveling in such declarations. Indeed, you speak correctly, Viserys remarked, looking at Ian with growing satisfaction, rendering Ian's previous slight irrelevant. But this time, I must take action myself. I must avenge my father and brother. That is your right, Your Grace. Ian then indulged Viserys with a few more flattering remarks, successfully instilling a sense of satisfaction in him, before preparing to retire for the night. However, just before Viserys departed, he abruptly halted, turned around, and gazed at Ian. Oh. Illyrio asked me to convey to you that at my sister's wedding, he invites you to accompany him in presenting a gift to the newlyweds. At that moment, we shall introduce you as Sir Ian Dane. It is a privilege, and I have already committed on your behalf. A sudden tightness gripped Ian's throat, yet he nodded in agreement. Satisfied by Ian's affirmative response, Viserys took his leave. Was this truly Hazar's intention? Ian pondered the retreating figure of Viserys. Was he attempting to sow discord between me and Illyrio? Or perhaps between myself and Viserys? A twitch at the corner of Ian's mouth suggested his disbelief. Could he be so trivial? What significance would it hold to provoke relationships involving a mere pawn like me? My only asset is Viserys' trust. But what value does that hold? Shortly after arriving in V's Dothrak, he would be suffocated by Khal Drogo's gold for offending Daenerys. What worth does his trust possess? Moreover, Viserys is a man who, one moment, can clasp your hand and stand shoulder to shoulder with you as a brother, and the next, roar at you for the slightest offense. Were it not for my desire to remain close to the Mother of Dragons, I would have no inclination to indulge this pitiable creature any further. He is but a wretched soul, stripped of all but a fragile self-esteem. Yet he clings to the delusion of being a true dragon. In truth, all he has left is his pitiful pride, which has never been acknowledged by anyone. This neglect has warped his character, compelling him to bully his sister Daenerys as a means to vent his frustrations and seek solace for his frail self-worth. This is precisely why Ian could so easily garner Viserys' trust. He was the first individual in this world to genuinely tend to Viserys' lamentable pride. Even Illyrio, when faced with Viserys, positioned himself as an equal collaborator. It is only under Ian's performance that Viserys perceives himself as a true dragon, though soon enough, he shall become a dead dragon. Contemplating this, Ian's steps faltered momentarily, his lifted foot suspended in midair. What if this foolish dragon does not perish? A sudden thought struck him. I lack the power to prevent Daenerys from marrying the Horse Lord, yet I possess the capability to thwart Viserys' provocations towards Daenerys. If I can keep this irritable fool at bay, what might unfold next? Exchanging Daenerys and Khal Drogo for 10,000 Dothraki warriors had long been an agreed-upon transaction. Viserys views it as a trade. Perhaps Drogo perceives it as a gift exchange, yet that distinction bears little consequence. As long as Viserys refrains from self-sabotage, he will undoubtedly receive Drogo's reciprocation, those 10,000 Dothraki warriors. A treasure. Ian suddenly comprehended his own worth, which he had long doubted and sought after. Prince Hazan eagerly sought to align himself with this value, which resided within Viserys. Given the current circumstances, once Viserys truly acquired the more than 10,000 Dothraki warriors, who would ascend as the leader of the royal army? Perhaps Drogo would send a commander to lead this force. Yet since this army was a gift from Drogo Khal to Viserys, the general appointed by Viserys would possess at least half of the command authority. With this thought, Ian's breath grew increasingly rapid, for he alone remained as a vassal by Viserys' side. Ian realized that he had previously jumped to conclusions, knowing that Viserys would self-sabotage. He deemed him worthless. However, Hazan did not share this view, referring to Viserys as a little king, clearly perceiving him as a child. Hazan, having recognized Viserys' trust in him, judged that he held value. And his invitation for Ian to accompany him to present gifts to Khal was merely a means to manipulate the relationship between Viserys and Illyrio. In the face of simultaneous invitations from Illyrio and Hazan, should Ian choose to accompany Hazan to the wedding, Illyrio would undoubtedly be incensed. Thereafter, if Viserys were to forgive Ian, a rift would inevitably form between Viserys and Illyrio. As a prince of Pentos, Hazan would likely not tolerate a wandering king who commanded over 10,000 Dothraki warriors becoming too close to a governor. Ian's eyes narrowed as he began to weigh the options. Would playing along serve his interests? The benefits were obvious. Should Viserys maintain a close alliance with Illyrio, at least two voices would surround him, and Illyrio was evidently not an easy adversary. But what if Viserys and Illyrio were to fall out? That foolish dragon would then be at his mercy. Given Hazan's urgency to deal with Illyrio, why not turn the tables to his advantage? Moreover, attending the wedding with Hazan would also offer a chance for prestige. 30 points of reputation were not to be easily discarded. Note, Commander refers to the leader of the Karassa, a minor faction, and Drogo's second-in-command. Chapter 28. The Prince's Palace. The palace of the Prince of Pentos lay at the heart of the city, a grand edifice constructed entirely of pure white marble. Expansive and opulent, the Prince of Pentos was merely a nominal leader, fulfilling ceremonial duties. This magnificent palace was undoubtedly the face of Pentos, reflecting its glory without a hint of diminishment. Passing through the towering golden archway, Ian, along with many other noblemen of Pentos, was ushered into the prince's palace by eunuchs. Along the cobblestone path flanked by intricately carved stone columns, they first traversed the royal garden, its vibrant hues failing to capture their attention as they proceeded to the kingdom's square. According to the eunuch's explanation, once the arrival of the Tetris family is announced, today's competition will commence here. For now, they can proceed to the hall to rest. Naturally, Ian would not be foolish enough to linger in the square under the sun. Thus, he followed the crowd towards the resplendent front hall. The front hall is exceptionally spacious, approximately 3 times the size of the Red Keep's hall, with a thick layer of milled carpeting adorning the floor. The stone columns supporting the ceiling are intricately carved with the 3 great symbols of Pentos: the golden scales representing trade, the steel swords symbolizing war, and the silver whip embodying law. Surrounding the hall are rows of long tables laden with an array of fine wines and exquisite delicacies. Even though it is far from lunchtime, in the center of the hall stands a colossal statue of the King of Light. Upon entering, numerous Pentos nobles make their way to the stone sculpture to offer prayers to the King of Light. At this moment, Ian recalled that he had already embraced the protection of the King of Light. In the midst of the long night filled with darkness and peril, as he listened to the familiar prayer, he suddenly felt an urge to test his fire magic, yet he found himself at a loss. Hazan gently lifted the silk blanket adorned with golden threads, breathing softly, but Delife seemed reluctant to grant him a moment's respite and wrapped herself around his back tightly. Time was running short. Hazan delicately removed Delife's hand and turned to face her. In his gaze, Delife perceived his determination, prompting her to release him with a sulky pout. Lowering her head in silence, observing her downcast demeanor stirred a warmth within Hazan's core, yet he quickly averted his gaze and rose to don his attire. "Not now," he remarked. "Very well, I understand," Delife replied as she began to dress as well. "I shan't impede your important matters, for like you, my father wishes to witness a powerful Pentos." Indeed, Hazan chose not to wear his splendid robe. Instead, he picked up a suit of heavy armor forged from fine steel. Through the castle window, he gazed outward, envisioning a formidable Pentos. However, a strong Pentos cannot arise amidst the incessant disputes of 40 families and the power struggles of 7 governors. Pentos requires a true leader. Hazan turned to face a mirror, allowing Delife to assist him in donning the heavy armor. "Tetris and Illyrio are my greatest obstacles in unifying Pentos. One commands the most troops, while the other possesses the greatest wealth," Hazan declared as he drew his sword from its jeweled bronze scabbard. "Today, I shall bring disgrace to the Tetris family and challenge the governor's faith in their leadership." As Hazan chuckled and turned, he placed a kiss upon Dalev's forehead, proclaiming, "You truly are my lucky star. I never expected that the Ian you recommended would provide me with 2 outstanding warriors like Kaith and Yura. With myself, the slave warrior Bali, and the Red God's monk Shai, along with those 2, we shall surely send Tetris home in disgrace." Unfortunately, Ian declined to join the battle. Dalev lamented. This caused Hazan to furrow his brow. Why are you so certain of that lad's formidable strength? Because I know Kaif. He is a martial enthusiast who would never bow to anyone unless that person far surpasses him in power, Dalev replied, noticing Hazan's displeased expression. With a flirtatious smile, she teased, What's wrong? Are you feeling jealous? I care not for your past. Hazan suddenly grasped Dalev's hand tightly, causing her pain. But you had best maintain your chastity from here on. Without waiting for Dalev's response, he released her hand. Arrange for someone to poison the wine prepared for him after the battle with Mormon. A toxin with delayed effects will suffice. He merely needs to perish outside the prince's palace. Hazan paused. I recall you have a dear sister from Lys. You should be able to procure such a substance with ease, yes? Dalev nodded, albeit with a furrowed brow, but I do not understand why you wish to eliminate Mormon. Did you not previously express a desire to ally with Ian against Illyrio? Precisely because of that, I must demonstrate my sincerity and strength, Hazan replied with a smile, offering no further explanation. If he is clever enough, he will grasp my intentions. If not, he is unworthy of being my partner. Perhaps unable to bear Ian's awkwardness any longer, Annie interjected, the ability to wield magic is contingent upon two factors, skill level and the power of the true god. At this juncture, the power of the Light King is exceedingly weakened, and with your magic at level 1, you are entirely unable to cast spells. Oh, Ian suddenly recalled that magic had vanished alongside the extinction of dragons, clearly illustrating the reason behind the Light King's diminished strength. So, if I wish to wield magic, I must await the hatching of the mother of dragons' three-headed dragon, thereby awakening the power of the Light King? In theory, yes. Only when the Light King's power is restored can his followers utilize more potent magic, Annie affirmed. Exchanging blood for blood, life for life. Ian contemplated the inferno surrounding Daenerys when she hatched the dragon eggs. She would exchange the lives of her husband Khal Drogo, her unborn son Rhaego, and that of the sheep-herding sorceress for the birth of the three dragons. That was her greatest agony and her rebirth. Yet at that moment, an absurd thought struck Ian. Is it possible for me to steal the 3 dragon eggs from Illyrio before he presents them to Daenerys, and then voluntarily conduct a blood-for-blood ritual, sacrificing 3 lives to hatch the dragons, thus becoming their father? However, reality did not afford Ian the luxury of further fanciful musings, for the eunuch at the entrance had already announced, in a sharp voice, the arrival of Dario Tetris and Prince Hazan. Chapter 29, whose Pantos Prince Hazan nearly stepped in the moment Dario Tetris entered, thus underscoring his own noble status without appearing inappropriate. D'Rif was adorned in a flowing gown of purple velvet, complemented by a magnificent jeweled belt that accentuated her curvaceous figure. She affectionately entwined her arm with Hazan's, gently leaning against his shoulder, exuding an air of delicate charm. It was then that Ian noticed that the woman could indeed possess such captivating allure. Though the event was a grand tournament, she effortlessly shone as the rightful heroine of the occasion, especially when Ian observed Dario Tetris, who, upon their entrance, unabashedly fixated his gaze upon the pair, his eyes shimmering with unmasked envy. Ian realized that the relationships among these individuals were likely far more intricate than they appeared. The nobles exchanged pleasantries before delving into discussions regarding the specifics of the competition. Ian refrained from pressing forward, for all of this was of no concern to him. He remained quietly in the hall, with Roll stationed at his side. In such public gatherings, Ian would never indulge in food, aware that his current identity had likely been exposed. Perhaps other players, fearing their own inadequacies, would not dare to hunt him openly. But the act of poisoning was not constrained by such reservations. Poisoning was a method that could easily eliminate a person and allow for a discreet retreat. Thus Ian abstained from the lavish banquet laid before him. Observing the Pantos nobles, whose intricate relationships resembled a labyrinth, Ian's bold idea, conceived when he first boarded the ship to Essos, resurfaced. To seize Pantos, this desire now burned fiercely within him. Unlike the initial fanciful notion, a clearer plan began to crystallize in Ian's mind. Unlike his previous state of having nothing, he now recognized that he was on the verge of acquiring over 10,000 Dothraki warriors. Should he successfully persuade Viserys and the commander of Drogo's Khalasar, he would gain the liberty to command that vast legion. To conquer Westeros with an army of over 10,000 Dothraki seemed a fanciful dream. Yet, what if the target were merely the modest city of Pantos? That would be more than sufficient. Illyrio once proclaimed that Pantos enjoyed the protection of the King of Light, asserting that even a million-strong Dothraki horde could not breach its defenses. To this, Ian could only scoff at his folly. The entire garrison of Pantos numbered fewer than 2,000. Even if they hastily recruited mercenaries to bolster their defenses, they could muster no more than 4,000 soldiers. The 4,000 soldiers of Pantos faced over 10,000 Dothraki warriors, relying solely on the towering walls of Pantos for their defense. If a method to breach these walls could be discovered, Pantos would surely fall into my grasp. At that point, I could either advance across the sea to claim the Reach or devise a means to conquer Meereen and Tyrosh, subsequently crossing the sea from the south into Dorne. Ian shook his head, dismissing thoughts of such distant ambitions. His immediate concern was how to address the formidable walls of Pantos. Let us not speak of memories as mere golden keys. A modern transplant cannot effortlessly create advanced weaponry that surpasses the era. The reality of such endeavors reveals the profound divide between disciplines. Even a true military enthusiast would struggle to replicate the complexity of large catapults or cannons without prior knowledge of mechanical drawing. Ian, a graduate of a dramatic arts academy, had evidently not studied such schematics, and he was merely a faux connoisseur of military affairs. Although he possessed an impressive collection of modern weaponry models, his understanding of ancient arms was rather limited. Regarding tactics, he had perused a children's version of the 36 stratagems and glanced through his father's bookshelf, which held the art of war and on the movement of troops, yet he had never fully engaged with them. Nevertheless, the imposing walls of Pantos did not intimidate Ian. His focus had shifted to the group of nobles before him, brimming with tension. A city rife with disunity brought a smile to his face. Observing the nobles embroiled in heated debate, particularly the deep-seated animosity in Dario Tetris's glare directed at Hazan, Ian felt a sense of satisfaction. Such an expression typically harbored either a vendetta for a slain father or the bitterness of a stolen wife. Gazing at Deli, who stood beside Hazan, Ian believed he had uncovered the answer. Now, Ian was fervently eager to comprehend the power dynamics and grievances within Pantos, for he sought to exploit these to incite chaos. Chaos is not merely a chasm but a staircase, and this staircase is authentic, with the act of climbing being its essence. These were the words of Count Berries. Ian wholeheartedly concurred. Yet he also believed that chaos could serve as a hammer, capable of smashing open the gates of Pantos. To grasp the specific circumstances of Pantos, Ian contemplated, casting his gaze upon Hazan and his entourage. Beside Hazan stood the children of Governor Godin Harkett, Deli arm in arm with Hazan, suggesting an engagement had already been established between them. Flanking them were Lotzi and another young man of presumably equal standing. Lotzi retained his beard, though his hair had been cropped short, indicating his Dothraki hairstyle was likely a mere wig, similar to his sister's. The other young man wore an expression of impatience, evidently having been dispatched by his family to maintain order amidst the gathering. He must also be a son of a governor, Ian thought, glancing across at Hazan's counterpart, Dario Tetris, who was accompanied by a young man clad in armor, adorned with a different emblem from that of Tetris. This suggested the presence of two governor factions on his side as well. The individuals standing in the forefront must be the offspring of other governors, remaining neutral amid the dispute between Hazan and Dario. Hazan's father lacked power, and with two governors on either side, they were likely evenly matched, Ian mused. Hazan was evidently an ambitious individual, yet he seemed to possess the backing of only two governors, an insufficient force for unifying Pantos. Should Illyrio succeed in persuading Viserys to gain the support of over 10,000 Dothraki warriors, Hazan's position in Pantos would become even more precarious. So, he seeks to form an alliance with me? A smirk crept into Ian's mind. If so, then I shall indeed ally with you. As for who ultimately claims Pantos, that shall depend on our respective merits. I have indeed deceived you. After all, you never inquired whether I wished for Pantos, did you? Chapter 30. The tournament officially commenced. The palace slaves prepared temporary stands in the palace square, constructing makeshift canopies for shade. Unsurprisingly, Hazan sent a eunuch to invite Ian to sit beside him in the main stand, and Ian gladly accepted. Hazan's intent was merely to showcase everything to Illyrio. Upon understanding Hazan's purpose, Ian no longer found him formidable. Rather, he contemplated how to leverage this prince to his advantage. I must hasten to finalize our pact, Ian thought as he followed the eunuch to the main stand. Prior to that, he instructed Roar to loan his Valyrian steel sword, Fury, to Kess. Although they spoke highly of Kess's prowess, who among those participating in this tournament was not formidable, Ian wished for Kess to encounter no misfortune, despite his silence. Ian felt a sense of reassurance with him nearby, whether it was mere psychological comfort or not. Regardless, lending him the Valyrian steel sword was the only aid Ian could offer. Upon reaching Hazan's side, Ian performed a slight bow before taking a seat. Noticing Ian's complete lack of the vigilance and restraint he had shown in previous days, Hazan initially furrowed his brow, but then a smile spread across his face. Ian returned the smile and initiated conversation, expressing his astonishment at the prince's generous regard. He then glanced at the plate armor adorning Hazan and inquired, "Your Highness, do you intend to participate personally?" With a hint of remorse, Hazan explained, "The origin of this tournament was indeed a provocation from Dario towards me. We decided to resolve it through a duel, allowing the Red God to adjudicate. Subsequently, Daenerys suggested we add some stakes to the duel, resulting in today's grand tournament." Ian raised an eyebrow, surprised to find that this seemingly cunning prince possessed considerable martial prowess. He glanced towards the back of Hazan's seat, where 3 eunuchs stood, each bearing a long war hammer upon their shoulders. Were all those seated in the main stand the offspring of governors? Observing the nearby platform, he noted 8 principal seats, presumably designated for the princes and the heirs of the 7 great governors. 7 of these were occupied, while 1 remained vacant. This seat was reserved for the Illyrio family. Hazan, noticing Ian's gaze linger on the empty spot, explained that it was a tradition in Pentos to maintain an empty seat for any governor, regardless of their participation in events. Illyrio? A sudden recollection struck Ian. He recalled that Illyrio was barred from the palace after marrying a Lyseni courtesan following the death of his princess wife. Hazan's smile faltered momentarily before he chuckled. Acknowledging Ian's knowledge of that secret, he waved his hand dismissively, stating that those events occurred many years ago. The prince who had once barred Illyrio from the palace was long since slain by the governors, and that prince himself had met his demise at the hands of enemies. While Illyrio continued to thrive in Pentos, Hazan spoke with an air of nonchalance, as if recounting an amusing tale from a distant past. Though he and his father could just as easily face a similar fate, the absence of Illyrio at this gathering was merely due to his lack of a son. Perhaps the Lyseni courtesan, whom you referred to as Syra, possessed some peculiar charm. After Syra's death, Illyrio had remained solitary, devoid of heirs, Hazan remarked. Ian offered a knowing smile, then turned his attention to the 2 combatants commencing the first round. Noticing that Ian had ceased speaking, Hazan too diverted his gaze to the unfolding contest. The thought of Illyrio's heirs sparked an intriguing hypothesis in Ian's mind. Could the character known as Aegon Targaryen VI, introduced amidst the Dance of Dragons, actually be the offspring of Illyrio and Syra? Of course, such speculation lacked evidence. Moreover, that was the narrative of the original work. Although Ian had perused both the original text and its adaptation, the developers of this game had not clarified whether the plot unfolded in accordance with the book or the series. Perhaps it was inconsequential. After all, this game had introduced 100 players into its world. Ian mused that, even in these early stages of the game, he was already attempting to alter the fate of Viserys. Surely, other players were not idly sitting by. He was certain that before the conclusion of the War of the 5 Kings, several players would have emerged with remarkable prowess. The subsequent trajectory of the world, however, would likely defy any predictions based solely on familiarity with the original narrative. The cold iron sword reflected the sun's rays, a splash of crimson marking the conclusion of the first match, as Hazan's slave warrior, Bali, pierced his opponent's chest with a thrusting blade, securing the first point for Hazan. That point was gifted by the opponent. Upon witnessing the formidable slave warrior, Balin, the adversary dispatched one of their weaker mercenary swordsmen to the arena. In Dario Tetris's estimation, Hazan's most formidable assets were this ferocious slave warrior and the red-robed monk known as Shai. Thus, he unhesitatingly opted to concede the point. However, this time it was Tetris's turn to send forth a contender. He could not allow himself to suffer 2 consecutive defeats. So he immediately dispatched one of the Bravo's water dancers. He believed Hazan would similarly relinquish this point. "I aim to achieve a clean sweep against Dario. I intend to bring disgrace upon the Tetris family." Hazan smiled at Ian and then issued a brief command to the attendant at his side. 2 minutes later, Ian beheld Kess appearing at the arena's edge, wielding fury. A monk in crimson approached him, placing his hands upon the sword and softly chanting for several seconds, igniting the blade in a fierce blaze. "To be candid, I was quite astonished when you unveiled that Valyrian steel sword, for it is unlike any I have heard of," Hazan remarked, casting a discerning glance at Ian. "You are quite enigmatic. And you are rather audacious," Ian replied, his tone polite, yet tinged with a condescending undertone. "Perhaps, but some matters must be undertaken." Hazan discerned from Ian's gaze that the latter comprehended his insinuation. "What is your choice?" "I harbor no conflict with Illyrio. On the contrary, he could significantly aid in the restoration of Viserys. As for me, all future power and glory are bound to Viserys, and I have no reason to offend Illyrio." Hazan furrowed his brow, taken aback by Ian's abrupt rejection, which diverged from his expectations. Of course, anything related to profit is negotiable. The world thrives on gain. and all commotion arises from the pursuit of benefit. Chapter 31. Humiliation. Hazan did not comprehend the latter part of Ian's statement, as it was neither in Valyrian nor the common tongue. Yet, based solely on the first half, Hazan grasped Ian's implication. I can offer everything Illyrio can provide, including gold, provisions, and even the ships you will require for your crossing. Hazan vowed. I recall that Pentos cannot possess more than 20 warships, as per your agreement with the Braavosi. And 20 ships will hardly suffice for our crossing, Ian reminded him. Indeed, Hazan chuckled, but when over 10,000 Dothraki warriors encamp at the gates of Pentos, will the Braavosi insist we uphold our pact? Illyrio can also provide us with such resources, and you are urging me to take a risk. Ian feigned rejection once more. For Illyrio had long supported him and his sister, while he had only just pledged allegiance to his king. Are you suggesting that if you ally with me, you may not be able to keep Viserys stable? No, no, no. Ian raised a finger in a dismissive gesture, unable to suppress a smile. It seemed that this Prince Hazan struggled to comprehend such an Eastern, subtle expression. What I mean is, I wish to witness your sincerity, your strength, and the benefits you can bestow upon me. Hazan found himself in a quandary. To be frank, Ian's status was decidedly superior to his own at this moment, and the condescending tone of his speech filled Hazan with a sense of distaste. Yet, if he dared to speak in such a manner, did it not imply that he was confident in his standing? Hazan could only ponder this, especially given Daenerys' assertion of Ian's enigmatic nature. As our cooperation deepens, you shall witness my capabilities. I assure you, Pentos will unconditionally support the restoration of Viserys, Hazan conceded, adding, as for my sincerity, is the head of Jorah Mormont sufficient? Presenting Mormont's severed head as a token of goodwill was both a gesture of appeasement and a veiled warning, should Ian continue to disregard his overtures. Hazan might well protect Mormont at once, or even deliver him to Viserys, thereby unraveling Ian's schemes. Within Illyrio's mansion, Hazan's men were present, and every word exchanged between Ian and Viserys could very well be overheard. Realizing that he could no longer negotiate for greater gain, Ian nodded in agreement to Hazan's proposal. At that moment, Kays found his opportunity. With a downward strike from his blazing Valyrian steel sword, he cleaved the Bravo's water dancer in two, as effortlessly as slicing a cake. Tydos's expression darkened, as though shrouded in shadow. He could not fathom where Hazan had procured such a formidable two-ended swordsman wielding Valyrian steel. The fire magic cast by the Red Priestess awakened the runes within the ancient steel, and the resulting heat caused Tydos's water dancer to lose his weapon during their seventh clash. What followed was a farcical chase, the water dancer employing agility to evade Kays's relentless onslaught, yet ultimately, he was captured and slain. In the third bout, it is once again our turn to send forth a champion, Hazan declared, rising from his seat to retrieve his war hammer from a servant. He ascended to the arena, effortlessly lifting the massive hammer, which would strain the shoulders of 3 men. Hazan did not appear particularly robust, prompting Ian to marvel at the sight. I, Prince Hazan Mogris of Pentos, hereby accept the challenge of Daario Tydos, he proclaimed, pointing a finger at Daario, who remained in the stands. I shall not take your life today, but you must kneel and submit to me. Furthermore, swear to the Red God that you shall keep your distance from my betrothed. Daario trembled with rage. They had originally planned to enter the arena during the decisive battle, yet Hazan, emboldened by 2 consecutive victories, had seized this moment to humiliate him. Glaring at Hazan, Daario took his battle axe from the servant and stepped onto the stage. The departure of Hazan afforded Ian a sense of relief, for he realized that even though he was now aware of Hazan's intentions and had assumed the initiative, the prospect of confronting Hazan still loomed heavily upon him. Perhaps facing even the likes of a mere Pinky or a minor adversary would not induce such pressure. For this Prince of Pentos was a figure of whom Ian had never heard, leaving him utterly unfamiliar with the man. As Hazan and Daario engaged in combat, Daario unleashed a ferocious assault, each swing of his axe aimed at claiming Hazan's life, while Hazan deftly defended himself, leaving no openings for Daario to exploit. Observing their duel, Ian felt a pang of envy, pondering when he might have the opportunity to enter the fray himself. Well, this is entirely your own dilemma, isn't it? Ian's voice echoed in Ian's mind. At this juncture, most players were likely still occupied with trade runs, bounty tasks, or participating in minor competitive events, activities typical of early development, battling petty bandits and other low-level foes to gain experience. Yet here he was, standing before Viserys and Prince Pentos, witnessing a grand tournament among the highborn elite. And he dared to wish to take the stage himself? It seemed some individuals were indeed overly ambitious. Ian chuckled awkwardly. To be honest, Ian was quite satisfied with his rate of progression. He believed that few players in the entire game could match his rapid development, especially once he acquired the multitude of Slavic warriors. He was confident he would leave all his competitors far behind. You are not mistaken. Your odds have surged to second place among all players, and stated. Who holds the first position? Unknown. We are unable to access information regarding other players. But the third position is occupied by a player who completed a side quest involving airdrops. Has the airdrop quest concluded? Indeed, only 88 players remain. Ian swallowed hard. The task had indeed proven to be a veritable meat grinder. Yet, why had the player who completed the airdrop quest seen their odds rise to third place? Shouldn't their situation be perilous? We cannot acquire pertinent information. Their most pressing issue is that their identity has been exposed, a predicament you share as well, yet your odds have skyrocketed to second place, indicating that the spectators have high hopes for you. Spectators? The observers can access the perspectives of all players simultaneously, and their level of confidence in players is reflected in the odds and elucidated. Chapter 32. Confrontation. A spark ignited in Ian's eyes. The spectator's ability to simultaneously view all players meant that the odds also served as a warning signal. Should someone's odds plummet suddenly, it would signify that they had drawn the attention of others and were in grave danger. And, monitor my odds closely. Notify me immediately should they decline, Ian commanded. Indeed. And concurred, I lack any pertinent regulations regarding the odds. This may be an oversight by the company or perhaps a deliberate warning left for the players. In any case, please keep a vigilant eye on my odds, and furthermore, notify me via voice alert upon receiving any emails or task notifications. Were it not for your voice resonating in my mind, I might have forgotten that I possess a system. Ding. And feigned a mechanical tone. The airdrop for the optional tasks has concluded. A new optional task has been released. The first to accumulate 200 reputation, amass 20,000 gold dragons, and command over 100 followers will obtain a formal title, along with a fief exceeding the village level. Additionally, personally slaying 100 foes and 5 players with over 800 reputation, as well as achieving a cordiality exceeding 30 with 4 or more noble players, will yield a reward of 10,000 gold dragons for attribute points and 3 skill points. Rewards are cumulative. Ding. Congratulations, player, on attaining the title of Sir, having completed the optional task of being the first to acquire a formal title. Task reward, 10,000 gold dragons. Choice of immediate delivery or deposit into the Bravo's Iron Vault, 3 attribute points and 3 skill points. Ding. Player has successfully achieved the optional task of being the first to acquire a fief exceeding the village level. Ding. Player has successfully completed the optional task of being the first to accumulate 20,000 gold dragons. Ding. Player has successfully accomplished the optional task of being the first to have cordiality exceeding 30 with 4 or more noble players possessing over 800 reputation. Ian swallowed hard. What was this rhythm? The progress of other players was hardly lagging behind his own. Excluding the individual who completed the airdrop task, others had already amassed over 20,000 gold dragons, and those who shared his enthusiasm for the game were surpassing him. They had already established good relations with 3 prominent figures boasting 800 reputation. Please allocate my attribute points, Ian commanded, and then inquired, if I choose to deposit gold dragons into the Bravo's Iron Vault, can I still recruit couriers? Indeed. Our couriers can seek out players after delivering the gold coins to Bravos, and responded. Then let us deposit the funds into the Iron Vault, and allocate all my attribute points to strength, while directing all my skill points towards swordsmanship. Ian had contemplated magic, but he wished to fully develop his swordsmanship first, so that in future battles, he would not need to cower behind others. We typically do not recommend such a distribution, she cautioned. Your swordsmanship has already reached 7 points. And most combat techniques rely simultaneously on strength and agility. Skills cannot be fully executed if attributes fall below 3 times the skill level. Oh, you should have mentioned this sooner. I had always assumed that swordsmanship primarily relied on strength, while horseback riding and archery depended on agility. Here, swordsmanship is considered foundational. It will differentiate into specialization for heavy and light swords upon reaching level 10, at which point it will indeed separate into strength and agility. As for archery, the notion that archers rely solely on agility is a grave misconception, as drawing a bow primarily depends on strength. Variations in the draw weight of a bow significantly affect its power and range. Then please allocate all my attribute points to agility and direct all my skill points towards magic. After completing the adjustments, the player's current attributes are as follows. Strength, 28. Agility, 19. Skills, swordsmanship level 7, horsemanship level 4, lance level 3, magic, fire magic level 4. As Annie's words fell, Ian immediately sensed a distinct transformation. First, a wave of intense heat enveloped him, and then, within his vision, the fire elements gradually became clearer. Ian extended a hand, attempting to manipulate these elements. Yet he found himself at a loss. The elevation of his magical proficiency merely opened the gateway to the realm of magic, but to truly master the art of spellcasting, he must undertake systematic study of incantations at the Red Temple, and he cautioned. Ian shook his head, acutely aware that he lacked the luxury of time. The wedding of Zagakeo and Dany was imminent, after which he would accompany them to Westeros. For now, thoughts of learning magic were futile. There was little use for it before the dragon's appearance. He needed to devise a strategy to secure more optional quests. Currently, he had 4 remaining tasks: gaining 200 reputation, acquiring over 100 followers, personally slaying 100 enemies, and defeating 5 players. Aside from the challenge of defeating 5 players, the other 3 quests appeared feasible. Among these, acquiring 100 followers seemed the simplest. Given that no one had accomplished this yet, it was evident that there were certain restrictions, such as loyalty metrics. Thus, purchasing the Unsullied was undoubtedly a shortcut. These absolutely loyal Unsullied could meet any requirements necessary for followers. Astapor was quite distant, yet occasionally, benevolent patrons would transport a small contingent of Unsullied to sell in Coer, Varnost, Mill, and Tyros. Since Mill and Tyros were not on Ian's route, sending someone ahead to Varnost and Coer to procure Unsullied was indeed a wise plan. The price for Unsullied was approximately 80,000 silver stags for 50. While cities might impose a premium, it wouldn't be excessive. Preparing 1,000 gold dragons to purchase 100 Unsullied was entirely feasible. With this realization, Ian promptly commanded Roll and another knight to take 1,000 gold dragons and set off for Coer to acquire 100 Unsullied. Ian understood that soon 2 new couriers would bolster his defenses, and the Unsullied they procured would ensure his absolute control over Viserys on their journey to Westeros. Or perhaps, a chilling thought struck Ian. What if he were to buy 100 Unsullied only to eliminate them? That would complete 2 quests, yielding a total of 20,000 gold dragons and 6 attribute points, along with 6 skill points, sufficient to elevate himself to the ranks of elite warriors and amass a formidable army of Unsullied. As Ian pondered, he observed the unfolding match. Hazan did not boast. He possessed the means to dismiss Daario with disdain. Their combat resembled a mere play for him. He could have concluded the fight long ago, yet he refrained, perhaps purely wishing to humiliate the Tetris family. In their last encounter, Hazan first shattered Daario's right knee with a heavy hammer, then broke his left leg with another blow. However, even as Daario lost consciousness, Hazan was left yearning for the words of surrender that never came. Ultimately, members of the Tetris family carried Daario off the arena, while Hazan, brimming with exuberance, returned to his seat. Doesn't directly incapacitating the heir of the Tetris family risk incurring their wrath? Ian inquired, a frown creasing his brow. The Hazan he remembered was not one to act so recklessly. Old Tetris is akin to a breeding boar with 12 sons. Losing 1 or 2 holds little consequence. Hazan scoffed, a glimmer of vengeful satisfaction evident in his eyes. Furthermore, General Tetris was a man who valued honor above life itself. By publicly rendering his son incapable in the arena, he would only perceive his son's failure as a disgrace to the family. In that moment, Ian comprehended why Daario, despite being significantly weaker than Hazan, had dared to challenge him. Perhaps it was the weight of his father's sternness and the honor of their military lineage that forbade him from appearing cowardly. This realization stirred a twinge of sympathy within Ian for Daario Tetris. Though Daario had succumbed to unconsciousness, the match was not yet over. The Tetris family sent forth another water dancer from Braavos, striving to salvage their final vestiges of dignity. This time, Hazan opted for Mormont to compete, intending to conclude the battle with a decisive 4-0 victory, thereby utterly stripping the Tetris family of their honor. In Hazan's estimation, Mormont's prowess slightly surpassed that of his monk. Shai typically could only manage a stalemate against the slain slave warrior. Hazan felt a pang of regret for the latter's demise, as he regarded the slave warrior as a fierce beast, a weapon he wielded with remarkable ease. Yet, in comparison to the opportunity to successfully humiliate Daario Tetris, all was deemed worthwhile. Hazan glanced at his fiancée, Dayliv, a natural beauty and a woman of wild abandon, who was pivotal in securing the support of the House Hockett. The Hockett family was the only one in Pantos capable of rivaling the Tetris family in military influence. To become the true master of Pantos, Hazan knew he must accept this woman, both loathsome and captivating. Fortunately, today, He had compelled Dario to pay the price for this green cap with his own legs. The battle on the arena has commenced, and Ian finds himself less concerned about the outcome. Perhaps Mormont will be vanquished by his adversary, allowing Hazan to fulfill his promise to Ian, resulting in a slight diminishment of his own honor. However, the enemy has exhausted their formidable trump cards, while Hazan still possesses the red-robed monk named Shai. Ian was invigorated by the memory of Shai igniting the Valyrian steel sword in Kai's hand with a mere incantation. Hazan's victory seems assured, prompting Ian to take his leave and depart early. Since Hazan had pledged to use Mormont's life as a testament to his sincerity, Ian felt no further apprehension. He harbored no desire to witness Mormont's demise firsthand. Ian understood that, should the need arise, he would personally slay 100 unresisting innocents, which would pose the greatest challenge to himself. Hazan acknowledged Ian's request and, after reminding him to meet at the prince's palace the following day, dispatched a eunuch to escort Ian and his companions away. Upon leaving the prince's palace, Ian returned to Illyrio's mansion, swiftly counting out 1,000 gold coins for Roll, instructing him and another knight to journey to Varnoth to purchase 100 innocents before heading towards the direction of Westeros. Should no one complete the task of slaying 100 by then, he would take it upon himself to accomplish the deed. Suddenly, En's voice resonated in Ian's mind, warning him that the real-time odds for players are plummeting rapidly. What is happening? Ian pondered. As the system detected that no new spectators had placed bets in 2 continuous hours, while an unknown player's odds were rising swiftly. Surely, there could be no correlation? Ian's heart raced with unease. I am merely providing data. The interpretation is left to the player, and responded succinctly. Do not panic. I am currently within the walls of Pentos, in Illyrio's estate, accompanied by 4 knights, including Kai's. Common threats cannot reach me. However, Ian's expression grew tense as he realized that Hazan's invitation was a display for Illyrio's benefit. This meant Illyrio must have learned of Ian's alignment with Hazan. Would Illyrio, risking offense to Hazan, take action against him? Unlikely. Illyrio is known for his caution and would not easily provoke the perilous Prince of Pentos. Shaking his head to dispel the notion, Ian exhaled deeply, realizing he had erred in underestimating the potential threat Illyrio posed. He should have taken refuge in the prince's palace to ensure his safety. The pressing question now was how to lure Viserys and Dany into the prince's palace. For Viserys represented Ian's greatest asset at this juncture. Let us refrain from hasty actions for now. All will be addressed after attending the wedding of Tragakeo tomorrow. At the nuptials, even if I devise a means to abscond with Viserys, Illyrio shall no longer possess the capacity to thwart us. However, how might I persuade Viserys? No one can manipulate the true dragon. Indeed, that is the very reason, Ian chuckled. I could inform him that Prince Hazan conveyed his respects through Governor Illyrio. Yet Illyrio withheld Prince Hazan's gifts, treating him with utter disdain, as if he were not a legitimate king. A king ought never to befriend but one. Illyrio's actions render him a mere puppet. Illyrio merely seeks to control him. Ian beamed, for with his understanding of Viserys, he should be able to sway him. Now, it is merely a matter of awaiting tomorrow. Everything will be rectified then, Ian mused, but Viserys's roar shattered his reverie. Ian, that assassin still lives. He dares to participate in today's tournament at the prince's palace in your name. Should you not provide me with an explanation? Ian turned his gaze in Viserys's direction, where behind him loomed a throng of blades and axes.